Conwell, Andrew Franklin, Ben Wynn,
Here.
Carl Bennington Cross,
Here.
Danielle Bailey, present.
This is working here.
You may stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item 1D, agenda approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any objections? All right, the agenda is approved. We'll move on to the public comments section. Is there anybody here who would like to make a public comment about a non-agenda item? All right, then we will move on to item 3A, there was no one online, Taylor, okay. We'll move on to our district spotlight, our future cities team. Ms. Morale, you guys, would you like to, or Allison, would you like to? So we had a big congratulations to our future cities team for qualifying for international finals again. Glen Hills Middle School won first place at for the 5th year in a row. The finals took place in Washington, D.C., where 1,000 students from all over the world came to compete. The Glen Hills Nova Potentia team won the Nature Powered Solutions for Design and Equity Award. Thank you to all who generously participated in fundraisers to send scholars to finals. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you all for the opportunity and your support. You know, without the administrators and the school board members' support, we will not be here. You know, so that we have an amazing community, amazing group of parents and community partners that is making this happen. You know, last year we won the Future City competition. That was the theme was climate change. That led to our NASA project. With the NASA project now, we have we are working on 9 different NASA missions. We are submitting 4 more proposals to NASA. Our project, if we get selected, our experiments will go in the actual rocket. So that is happening. And then these kids presented in last year's International Space Conference, 2 state conferences, and we got an invite only last week from Lambeau Field. So 4 students are going to present to Hackers CEO. So I hope you can sponsor more money for us. And then 4 of them are going to California during the long weekend in May. Another cool thing is you guys will love it, especially as a member of equity committee member. So the Kevin Anderson, the DPI science consultant, asked me to present at the Wisconsin State Conference about the equity work that we are doing, especially in STEM at the state conference on April 19th and presenting 19th and 20th. And then end of August, I'm going to the Gifted World Conference in Greece. Talk about the equity work we are doing at Glen Hills. So Glen Hills is getting famous everywhere, all over the world.
Well, we have an equity committee meeting Wednesday, so you better all give you all our ideas. The way you're gonna be saying about us.
But I'm waiting for Colorado Springs Monday night because we are going to the National State Conference. We are showing the documentary, our documentary, and then the teachers are going to ask questions to students, and then so but we are
Go for it.
Ms. Morelli, when do you sleep?
Never, right?
I just want to say, as a parent of 2 former Future City competitors, you guys are going to remember this experience, especially the victory, but also all the nights, the weekends, everything that you did to make everything right, to practice the presentation, to get the model just right. All the work that you did, you are going to remember, and it's going to stay with you. And it's going to be something that you lead into as you go into high school, probably even beyond. So it's a wonderful, wonderful experience that you guys have been lucky enough and I should say strategic enough, right, to be able to do. We have had how many teams in the last 5 years go national? We've had like about 4 at least, right?
Yeah,
5.
we couldn't go during that, but we did present from Zoom.
Right, yeah, well, that was my daughter during the pandemic, but it's a wonderful program, and so if anyone's listening, if anyone wants to get involved, obviously contact Ms. Morley, but congratulations to you all. This is wonderful.
I wanna, would any of you guys, any of the teammates, like, I'd just be so curious to hear what your experience was, or what drew you to Future Cities, or what you would say to other kids thinking about it, but maybe, not sure if it's for them.
I mean, not only like watching my older sister do it when I was a kid, but I'm also like hearing about it in school and everyone like just talking about it. And it just seemed like such a good experience. And it just seemed like such a cool thing that I really wanted to participate in. And also definitely Miss Morales just cheering me on and like just helping us so much and like giving us all of our like motivation, just telling us we could do it. So without her, we wouldn't be able to get it. So.
Also, I feel like it's just a fun experience with people. Like, I got to do a lot of the skills that I really wanted to do in the first place. But I got to write an essay, I got to help with the essay, and I had to build a model. I burned myself a couple times to help me that. I got a lot of new experiences, from the pictures of. Yeah, one of my dreams, like, is to work in like environmental things, so it's just like a big step towards like looking at that field, looking at kind of where this get, but also being able to like step outside my comfort zone and like present in front of like large groups of people was really amazing. And very great.
Well, for sure, just thank you for sharing that, that's awesome. Awesome. All right, another round of applause for our.
Thank you for coming. Feel free to stick around.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item 4A, which is our budget guiding principles resolution, which has come before us a couple times now that it's in its final form. Carla, do you want to say anything about it, or?
I think what's needed to be said has been said before. I'm trying to open it so I can see. I think what's posted is, hold on, I'm trying to open it. A red line version reflecting comments we shared with each other a couple board meetings ago. So what you're looking at is the draft edited in real time 2 meetings ago as y'all provided feedback. So nothing else has changed.
All right. Well, the recommended action is a motion to approve the guiding principles.
I'll make that motion.
I will second that motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve the budget guiding principles resolution. Anyone need further information or comments, questions? Okay. Then I'll take a voice vote. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? The resolution is passed. Can we get that posted to our budget information, budget website? Awesome. All right, we are going to move on to our budget update. We don't have any content here, so. So just gonna talk about audits. Oh, Todd, though, great, okay, I guess, so I don't know who. Okay, great. Todd, if you're there, we're happy to listen.
As far as budget update, I mean, primarily, working on finishing up the audit. We've got, maybe half dozen areas to get through. We did get a draft to the PMA so they could continue the continuing disclosure. So we're good there for a while until we get the final. Also been kind of working with some staffing configurations in the business office moving forward into next year. So that's kind of been the focus, a little less on budget. I know Gus is working on that, but would really like to nail down that audit in the next 10 days or so.
I have a question, Helen. So what specific pieces remain to get to the auditors for them to complete the audit? I know we talked about this last time a little bit, but I want to make sure I'm clear on it.
The two big ones are, and it depends on how much they want us to go back and do bank reconciliations, but there's at least one of those outstanding, and then there's going through all the credit card expenditures and reclassifying those into the proper expenditures. Everything else, there's some minor things. There's some reports that we have to do. The reports actually come in after some of these other fixes are made, but overall, like I said, there's two big things, and then there's probably 4 or 5 other smaller items that once the larger items are taken care of, those will basically be able to be handled pretty quickly. So I do have Teresa working with CISA 5 on developing the reports that we need within the Skyward system, and then her being able to manage the information that comes out of there that the auditors are going to need, not only this year, but for the upcoming audit as well.
When you say how far back they want us to go, have they not said that yet for the bank rec?
Well, they at one point they said if you could just nail down the June 30th of 23, that might suffice. And at this point, I've not heard them say, no, we want you to go back. But it seems like, and this is not a criticism, but it seems like every time we get some work done, then they find other areas. So I'm hoping that 630 reconciliation will be enough in that area, and we don't have to go back and find some additional reconciliations.
And do you need assistance with that June 30th? I know a couple of meetings back.
No, that's what CISA 5 is going to help us with that Friday, I believe. They're coming Friday, and they'll probably do it remote, but we'll go through that Friday, and hopefully that will nail down that piece as well as some of the other minor reports that the auditors want as well.
Thanks, Todd.
This is Carla.
Yes.
I've been thinking about the purchase card transactions. Last time you mentioned that there were basically hundreds of thousands of transactions.
I don't know if there were hundreds of thousands, but there were many thousands, and all very relatively small.
Okay, is that? Do you have an idea of how many hours are going to be involved in getting that put into our system?
I don't think it'll be too bad, because I'm thinking most of those purchases are going to be in specific object areas, like either 400 or 500, and maybe some from what we call the 300 object. And once we're able to go through those, I don't know that we need to necessarily get into a lot of detail on the function of those. It's just basically getting them into the correct object and overall function, whether it's instruction versus support.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it because I think there is an interest in getting that done so that we can have a sense of where the purchase cards were used. And I've been wondering if it would be beneficial to have someone brought on in as sort of a special project person to do that, basically that data entry to support you in that work.
It probably would be someone in the office like Teresa, if she can, because they're going to know what the purchases. They're going to know more about who is actually using the card and what the purchases are for versus. I could probably look at those and get a pretty good idea. If I saw, I just for example, reams of paper, I would know what object code that goes to. But then the function, I might not know that piece,
Okay.
whereas
I
Teresa
have a
might be
person in
more-
mind who knows our systems and who might be able to help you out, so
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I don't see it taking a lot of time. Once you get the system down, it should go
Right.
pretty quick. It's
Yeah,
just a
it's a
matter of
knowledgeable
getting
person.
everything and going through it.
So Todd, if it's okay with you, if you think it's beneficial idea, I'll reach out to you. And maybe
Sure.
I could connect you with a person or two who might be able to come on and
Yeah,
get that done.
definitely. I think anything that speeds up the completion of the audit would be good. Like I said, we've bought some time with the draft, but it'd be nice just to have that behind us.
Okay,
Oh, I should also add, I did provide that to DPI too. So again, bought some time with DPI as well.
If I can just follow up that, so you talked about maybe being done relatively soon. I guess I'm curious, I mean, is that a matter of weeks? Is it a matter of, of days? Is it?
I'm hoping, I don't think a couple of days, but yeah, a couple of weeks. Like I
Okay.
said, we have by providing the continuing disclosure with the draft as well as the DPI with the draft, we do have some time now to kind of get through those. We don't have months, but a couple of weeks would be
And then-
not an issue.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to get a sense of it. And then
Yeah.
another question with that is, when it comes to just moving forward on audit, and I know that you're working with our office here, are we in good shape to be able to have those reconciliations done on a monthly basis so that we can kind of keep up?
We should, I mean, that is part of the plan going forward. I know we need to do some of those for this year yet, but I think that's some of the training that Teresa's going to get beginning on Friday, so that she is able to do those and keep up with them, as opposed to waiting, 3-4 months and then trying to get them done.
Thank you very much.
So going forward, with the business department, with any expense from now on, is it normal to state the source function and object immediately, or is it normal to have to go back?
Well, I think my recommendation is going to be anytime there's a purchase made, that it comes with an account code to it. In other words, if one of the department heads or the principals wants to make a purchase of something, they submit the order and it comes with an account code of which it's to be charged to. That's how most districts operate. Using the the purchasing cards, I would probably establish some different rules on that, you have to provide the documentation for what is being purchased within, 2 weeks, let's say. Or it should be done immediately, but if that's not realistic, at least 2 weeks, so that when those bills come in, when they're paid, they can write as they're entering the information into the payment system, they have the proper account codes to go along with them.
Okay, so then,
we don't have,
so I was just gonna ask, so going forward now for the 2023-2024 audit, theoretically, if they were not properly labeled,
yeah, we're gonna, right. But that's the nice thing now is we start that work now, and then when most of the field work probably is going to take place in July and August, so we do have some time. But that's why I'd like to get this audit through. Then we'll know how these things work, and then we implement those for the 23-24 audit before the auditors come in.
Thank you.
I apologize.
What is it about purchase cards? Because I wanted to just follow.
Well,
up
it's
on that.
about audit software, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, no, so very quickly, in my job, when we have an expense, obviously we have to get it reauthorized. And once we go through that process, whatever receipt that we have gets scanned in, and it gets itemized immediately, based on category, so that it gets up there and then goes through the process, within a week or so. What is this, and do we have software that does that, or we've been doing that manually? And does it pay for us to invest in the system that'll force people, to enter expenses, or that just doubling down the problem we had?
No, the normal process that I've always used is that, as Todd mentioned, is when someone makes a purchase, there is an account number right on the documentation for that, so that when an invoice comes, you match the two together, you have the account number, and when you're cutting the check, the account number is going right in. Same would be, I would concur with, same would be with the credit card, is when they are doing that, and any documentation that they're submitting should have an account number on it also. So again, normal process would be that your credit card bill comes in and comparing all your receipts to the bill line by line, and you have all the account numbers towards you're entering that payment of that bill, you're entering all of that in at that time. So that should be the normal, that would be the normal process.
Whether we have software or not, it would just be normal.
Yeah.
When you get it, to do it.
Yeah, we have to, at this point, we have to, where we are with Skyward and stuff like that, we gotta manually enter, we can't scan.
Yeah.
Scan things, and we just manually enter it, it's a process that isn't that cumbersome. It's not that we have that many.
But going backwards, it becomes cumbersome, because then you have to recreate, and just to kind of reiterate, you have to recreate and figure out exactly what those things were,
Yes.
and we make sure that there was some.
We gotta get the process such that we're doing it as we move forward. They can't, not as good for the thing, we'll get that squared away, get that straightened out, and have that ready to go.
So I have a question about purchase cards, because we recently approved the purchasing card policy. And so to my knowledge, I don't know if we had a policy. Do you know if we had a policy in effect prior to this Neola one? Well, it'll probably be on here. So I'm wondering, and we don't have to talk about this now, but best practices, because this policy talks about approved cardholders, and those have to be approved by the director of financial services, and I feel like we've talked about this before, best practice around, is there one card in the district? Is there one, how many purchase cards do we have, or did we have out there, and who would have known that? And so I'm just whether there should be a policy or a practice, I'm sorry, a practice or something in place that memorializes what's the best practice in other districts around who has the purchase card, who gets approved for that, how many in the district, do you need them at all?
Yeah, it goes district by district. I mean, I have in the district that I retired from there, the people in the business office were so anti-card, they didn't even want to mess with it. So the district office had a card because we finally had to have a card because we started to order from Amazon. And you couldn't cut checks and things like that, but they were holding it quite very close. Another district I implemented, they did have cards, and certain administrators had cards. That was part of their responsibility. Other staff members could come in and sign out cards and do that. I know that districts do assign cards to certain staff members, other districts assign certain staff members. My whole premise would be, and it's going to take some training with my administrators, is they each have budget. They need to monitor that budget. How they set that up with the use of purchase cards, because the bottom line, and that was my philosophy, the bottom line always was, as an administrator, if you come in over your budget, there's going to be a conversation. It would be one way, but there's going to be a conversation about the fact that you're over your budget. So some of that responsibility can be distributed to the administrative level, as we work with them and try to come up with procedures and a process to do that. Because again, the bottom line is, my feeling is that the administrator is responsible for, that's part of their job responsibility, responsible for their budget. So with them and work that out with them as to what's going to work, but it's not, and I understand, you know, the issue is right now is so much is being purchased online. That there needs to be some type of, you know, that's where we're at right now. It's gotta be something with a card. We know that in our own lives.
Sorry, one more question is, how soon should we anticipate, that you would have the ability to provide us with the purchase card report that's now part of our financial policy requirements? So the board treasurer receives detailed receipts of purchase card transactions as part of the monthly reconciliation process. That was ambitious when we passed it, so we do have, but I'm wondering at what point would we start?
Let me work with Todd and how they're progressing
Okay,
on this whole thing and how we're going to proceed. What we're doing. I think once we get going and are actively reporting 23-24 transactions, we should be able to.
Okay.
start to do that.
okay, great.
Good, and I'd like to add, I am aware from Teresa that there was a process established, but may not have been followed for 22, 23 and going into 23, 24. So the documents are probably, the documentation is probably there. It just hasn't yet been entered into Skyward, and that's the area that, you know, we need to make sure that the process is being followed properly. My guess is there at one time there had to be a good process in place, but maybe with the change in business managers, it was ignored or just wasn't followed for whatever reason. But I'd be willing to bet if you looked at what the processes were in the past, you were probably pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Gus, you're up then.
Okay. Twofold, we're working on a number of things. My intention still is that I will have a revenue budget on the 17th. And the board, funds on revenue, because that should be fairly easily be able to put together, because it's not a budget year, state budget year, so we know what state funding and stuff like that will be, so we'll be able to do that. I will, then I'll go through and explain. I think time to explain where some of those numbers come from. So you have some background, it will be finance, it will be 101, it will be finance 1. Try to keep it as simple as possible, just the basics that you as a board member need to understand. Some of the paperwork and stuff that comes up with these numbers is cumbersome and stuff like that. We're not going through line by line, we're getting the high points that you need as a board member. So we're gonna work on that. We're also working on some things. We got today, for example, Chris and I met with our insurance consultants. So we've begun a discussion about health insurance, where we will be in 23, 24 with that. Also talked about the whole, where we are overall with the budget and what impact health insurance, what we might be looking at our health insurance to in this budget situation that we're in, and our consultants, be it Brown and Brown, are fully aware of situations, and we'll have some recommendations for that. So we're working on that piece of the budget. We're talking. I need to sit down. We have to get some information to our the actuary on retirement benefits, so they can do their work to be able to come up with the report that the auditors will need in July or August to do the audit. So we're working on that piece of the puzzle. So right now there's a number of pieces that we're working on. Yeah, they're all just sort of out there individual pieces, but they all have impact on audit and 23-24 audit and 24-25 budget. We'll have the revenue to you at least, and then it'll be probably middle of June, but beginning of June, that we'll have the expenses to match with revenue. The goal would be is to try to wrap this budget up by you say preliminary draft of the budget by June 30.
Chris, do you plan on having more info on public meeting too, the 17th?
Yes,
Because I know Kevin had reached out about that, so.
yeah, we'll have on what we currently have. I believe Baird will be here to talk that night also about future borrowing and obviously discussion about referendum and things like that. So it'll be an exciting meeting because there's going to be so much finance.
Good.
And I,
Exciting.
Questions?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it sounds stupid, but I'm still looking for information on where our spending is in this year. What have we actually spent our money on? Are we able to estimate whether we're gonna come in at the numbers that we approved in the fall? You know, what's it looking like? And I feel like I just don't have a strong sense of whether you're able to provide that yet or when we're gonna be able to get that. And you know, as speaking for community, I know that's what people want to see. What did we actually spend the money on? And I think that's gonna help us all wrap our heads around what next year's budget needs to look like.
yeah, and part of it is, as I did last month on the 17th, I'll have run a summary as of the end of March. We'll be able definitely to see where we are with salary and fringes, which is a key component because that's taking up about 80% of the budget. And see where we are with that, and as are able to other expenses that, you know, any expenses that we're writing checks for are in there, in the budget. We just, as Todd mentioned, once we get going on these credit card things, get that into 23, 24 expenses and start doing that, we'll have even a better idea.
That's what's still missing.
That's probably the biggest piece right now that is missing, but we'll have the salary, we have the salary and fringes, and like I said, I'm gonna get 1 month report, second board meeting each month now of where we're at, where based on what we know, where we're projecting the end of the year could be.
So is it possible that the purchase cards are 20% of our, you're saying like salaries and benefits are 80%, that we can talk about year to date? Purchase cards are a big piece, are they like
No,
20%?
No, because what you have, and the other part that we do know is we know the district insurance,
Okay,
we know the transportation.
right,
Those are big pieces there. We know the utilities. I would say that your purchase cards are probably 5 to 7% at most. Because those are gonna be mainly out of the building, those are gonna be mainly supplies, materials, things like that, for classroom use and things like that. It's not. There are not a whole lot of big purchases that are being used with credit cards.
Do we have a total number on how much purchase cards were used this year?
I have.
We'd have to go through statements.
Yeah, and I'd have to talk to Todd. I've let
Okay,
Todd
that's
deal
Todd's
with that
really what-
right
yeah.
now. I
Got it.
haven't gotten into that because there's been enough other things to,
Yeah, I got it.
so we've sort of separated that out.
Todd's the P card man.
Yes.
Got it.
And just so people are aware, what's the normal percentage for salaries and benefits?
It's probably roughly, I would assume this is roughly about 80%.
What, I mean, across the state.
Across the state, it's gonna be anywhere between 75 and 80.
Yeah.
That's, 75 would be closest to the small rural districts that aren't paying staff at the levels that most of the larger metropolitan districts are doing. That's what would drive them down a little more. But most of us everyone's gonna be around that 80%.
Thank you.
I have a general budget question, so we know that there's still like cuts we need to make, right? We've talked about those, like, you mentioned health insurance and other benefits, like, at what point is it appropriate for us to start talking about, because we know we're not gonna make those for this coming year. We know if we're looking at changing anything, it would be the next year, but I feel like we probably should be talking about those soon, right?
Well-
Or when do you foresee us?
Well, with the benefit thing, they told us that in the next week or so, we should be getting the quotes from health insurance, as
Okay.
to what they anticipate and stuff. And as we get that information, as I get that information, I'm gonna be bringing that to the board because ultimately I'm gonna need your approval
Okay.
on insurances for the 24 24-25 school year. I can't wait until June with the full budget. Those pieces will come, and there may be other pieces that I can bring forward
Okay,
before I bring the full budget if I need to for approval. So, so some of the expense side may get, maybe cover a couple meetings, but, the entire thing would be, so you see the entire picture in June. But yeah, as we get some of those things, we will move forward. Yeah, and then there's obviously the things that we need to look at for future years.
Oh.
To provide how we may use things there, strategies that we use in future years.
ongoing.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's ongoing.
Always an ongoing, got it.
Be patient, you'll get the information, we're working on it.
Oh, yeah, I understand. I just want to keep it on
No,
my
and I
radar.
understand,
It's
yeah.
supposed to be on my radar.
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm glad you guys are keeping it on the radar.
Okay.
So I do have one more question. So just, I think for all of us and the public, it feels like things are moving slowly. Is this kind of the typical pace for things? Is it just that it takes a while and you have to figure it out? It's an unusual scenario.
I would tell you probably it's taking a little longer because we're trying to sort out things and get that 22, 23 audit done. My normal thing would, and normally in this year, we would, in a district that did have some of these other side issues, I would probably be presenting the overall budget in the May type thing. We're pushing it back. I need to buy myself a couple more weeks, I think, to try to get the sort of things out. But I think I'm trying to stay on basically trying to get before June 30th, a draft, a budget that you can, pretty comprehensive budget. Yeah, there's gonna be a little tweaking afterwards because things that the state does, I'm gonna have to make some estimations on equalized aid right now, state aid. After July 1st, the state gives us an estimate. Obviously, we would have to make some adjustment then. And obviously, there's final adjustments next week. The state gives all the final numbers, but there'll be a couple things on the revenue side that might need to be adjusted, but the expense side, once we get to June 30, should be fairly. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there could be people who resign and be hired, there could be changes in salary and fringes, July, August, but nothing huge. We should have that. So that's it. I mean, I'm trying to use the same time frame that I would use, in other districts. Time frame based on my contract, what my contract is with you at this point.
All right, thank you. We are gonna move on. Oh, any questions from online or in the house? Oh, we got one. Yeah, we got two. Okay. Wait, all right, hold on. Let's up Michelle. Get back.
And then I know Michelle Curtis, a staff member, when you were talking about changes to healthcare and that, and I think in next year, did you mean 24, 25 or 25?
Well, we're going to get a quote on a rate for 24, 25. We're going to get that in the next week or so. Part of our discussion will be, what is that rate increase? How will that fit into the 24, 25 budget? Would we need to modify the insurance plan to make it fit better in the 24, 25? Basically trying to lower cost. If cost came in real high, do we do some modification there? There was discussion today about the fact that maybe do we go out and look for a new carrier that could have impact on the budget line. So we're looking at things like that. We're also trying to, with the health insurance, would be strategizing down the road, what options would there be for future years in case premiums came in high, not only looking at 24, 25, but I've always looked 2 or 3 years down the road and say, okay, what options are out there that we might be able to do in future years, not use all my options this year, but make sure I have some options for future years also. So it could be, I mean, so it's looking at this year plus trying to look, I always try to look at these 2 years down the road.
And changes that would happen then would be in response to the cost from the insurance company. rather
Yes.
than-
Yes.
Gentlemen, front.
The couple of meetings, the credit card.
Sorry, could you state your name and?
Oh, my name's
address?
Kurt Glazner, 945 West Calumet, the River Hills. And the couple meetings, the credit cards has come up. Is that a big number or what is that number?
I would say that we probably would be talking, I'm trying to think, all I can state to you is in the previous district that prior to my retirement, well, it was the Partyville School District where I worked, which is probably about 100 students smaller than this district, is our total supply budget for buildings and things like that was probably about $110,000 type thing out of a $11-12 million budget. So I would assume that there are purchases being made of supplies and things where we're writing checks that are being recorded and stuff like that. So I would guesstimate that we're probably talking, my guesstimation right now, and I could be wrong, depending upon the total usage here, I would say that we're probably talking in a neighborhood of $75,000-80,000. Based on my experiences in a district slightly smaller than this. And based on the fact of basically using those cards.
And we don't have a big bulk number, not going into the detail of everything, but you know, you go look at MasterCard. And it is, you add up 12 months and you got it.
Oh,
Well, I could,
tell you right now that I'm not working on the card.
Yeah, Todd is the one.
Yeah. You're probably looking at a approximate 10 months at maybe 40 to 50,000 a month. For that's for 23, 24. So you're looking at 400,000 plus, maybe more.
400,000 plus number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that explains it.
But I mean, that's a comparison to a 17-18 million dollar budget. So a 400,000 supply budget is not unusual for that overall, district budget.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for their other.
Anything else?
I'm sorry, I gotta go back. Nope, no comments from online.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Thank you, Gus. Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to the discussion of Good Hope. We have Michael Hacker here from Cadence Consulting, who was our owner's rep throughout our facilities planning process, who is now also assisting us in getting, what are they called, some opinions of value at Good Hope. Tonight is just a discussion. I have asked Mike to come here because as we look at our budget and we have this asset, we have this this property where it is a reasonable question to ask, what should we do about this and how might this fit into our current situation right now? So in order to ask that question, to make decisions, we need to know, what do we need to know? What should we be asking? What information? What might the process look like? What considerations are out there? And so Mike has offered to help guide us, give us some information about what that process might be or look like. Let us ask questions. So that's a long-winded way of just starting the discussion, public discussion around it. Mike, are you there?
I am here. Yep. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Sounds great. Well, first, thank you. Good to see everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. As was just introed, I think the goal tonight was to, maybe reinitiate some of the conversation around Good Hope, some of the longer term planning around Good Hope. As you just noted, really, we started to just do some of our background study and lay just a bit of groundwork around what might we need to know if we were to consider some actions going forward for Good Hope as it related to our facility master planning work. So it was really just tied to the broader dialogue around how we're looking at all facilities district-wide. So we'd started to do a bit of analysis around that and then kind of paused it. And I know I, in front of the board, had a couple early initial conversations where we kind of tiptoed down the path a bit around dialogue about what the vision for Good Hope would be long-term. And so I have prepared tonight a few items that we had started to gather from the previous effort, and then really wanted to open up a dialogue about how best to go forward, basically share what we do know, and then start to identify what questions the board might have so that we can better prepare for our next steps, and certainly would do some homework between now and then to support that. And so with that said, I certainly have worked with other districts in as recent as this past year with the Cudahy School District to divest in a school property. And so have gone through this process from a couple of different angles, and every district goes about it a bit differently. So there's not a single way to go forward with selling a property, but there are some strategies and some things that I think the board should dialogue about up front to establish some guiding principles about, what are the goals of this. So if in fact the district considers divesting or selling this property, if that is the case, what are the goals for doing so, other than purely financial, which is a important goal, certainly. There are other things that we should consider because it may influence or direct some of the strategy about how we take next steps. So if the board has specific feelings about what the use of that property is, if not a district asset, if there are goals for maybe how to think about community enhancements as a part of a redevelopment of a property, there are some things we can start to talk about doing in preparation for establishing that as well. So prepared certainly to talk about some of that as we go through, and then have, as I mentioned before, and as Danielle noted, previously we being the district reached out to Colliers as a commercial broker who has done this type of work before, simply to get a gut check on a potential value of this property. And Colliers offered
value at this point.
Yeah.
It's something that should be in an executive session.
Right, so I think Mike, it's in our executive content, and we won't be talking about the actual number, right?
Yep.
That's
Correct.
What,
yep. I was.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, I was just going to mention that we do have a broker's opinion of value in hand, just simply as a reference point, which we can dialogue about in whatever settings most appropriate going forward. So pausing there, with that said, like I said, I'm really prepped tonight to help facilitate, talking through what we do know, where the board currently sits with their thinking around Good Hope, and then certainly talk about some potential next steps. So Danielle, is there anything else you want me to specifically talk about, or do you want to open up for some dialogue first?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think my first question is about the work that has been done, the conversations that had happened as part of the facilities planning. I'm wondering if, because to me, I think you have to understand the current financial impact of what owning Good Hope means to our district. And it was when we did the tour with you guys that we were like, hey, how much money do we make renting this property? How much do we learned that there's been a lot of deferred maintenance, and that the upcoming maintenance costs to that building could it be huge?
Millions.
Right. There are big things coming and there's been deferred maintenance. And so I want to understand, where do we sit? Where does it sit right now? Is it something where we lose money on it every year, which was something that I had heard, but I don't know that it's been confirmed. I don't know if anybody, so I guess that's one of the starting places is in the work you guys have done. Did you come to understand what the current financial impact of owning Good Hope means for the district in this moment?
So I can start from a facility standpoint. So what we identified with the architects and the contractors as we went through that is that as we look at the existing state, the building systems, the envelope, the property, looking to maintain it in its current use, and then the potential of needing to start to renovate for ADA compliance and updating for other code compliance in the building, that over the next 10 years, we were looking at about $6.6 million worth of just core maintenance needs. And then as we started to look at some of the other best practices and in ADA improvements, meaning if we start to renovate that building to make improvements, we will trigger other code requirements. So that would step up to 9.8 million. Okay, so basically if we just stay as we are, using it the way we are today, don't make any significant renovations in the next 10 years, the district should plan for about $6.6 million worth of infrastructure improvements that likely will be needed. Okay, so those were.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I think you're gonna get to it, talking about the revenue or what we do earn from it.
Yep. Yeah, so there were a couple numbers provided previously. Before I dive into that, I don't want to step over Todd or Gus either. So if either of you have any takeaways since you've been onboarded here towards that, I welcome you leading that. If not, I'm happy to speak to what I was provided a few months back.
Yeah. Yes, we also have somebody who's very familiar with that building in our audience now as well, Mr. Goodman. But can I have him speak to what he knows, and then we'll come to you if you've got, okay, great. All right, yeah, so Mike, you can speak to that. I don't think Todd and Gus have been able to hone in.
Yeah, I mean, the main takeaway there was that my understanding is the district is functioning at a loss in that building on an annual basis. And so when we take in the amount of revenue from the 4 current tenants, and that was compared over the past, I think it was 3 years, to what's being spent to operate that building, maintain it, clean it. There have been a few larger ticket facility improvements needed, kind of emergency improvements. There was some roof leakage and I think some plumbing issues recently. When we take all that into account, it's functioning at a loss. Okay, and I'm just cautious to float a number out there since I don't have that in hand, Danielle. But I think the key takeaway there was that it's not revenue neutral, and in fact, it's not making money per my understanding. So that understanding was the basis for why we started to do some of the initial research around what other approaches long-term might be in the district's best interest for that property, which might have meant divesting if we didn't have an educational key use in the master plan.
Okay, can I pause you for a moment, Mike? So I want to ask Allison if that's consistent with your understanding. So what is your understanding of the financial piece of that?
We're not.
Do you know how much? When did you come to that understanding?
Same information was presented to all of us.
When?
It was during the facility study and that information was presented to the full board. I was under the impression that we were also losing.
Okay, so and did we ever dive deeper to learn what the actual cost was, what the losses?
No, but we could dive deeper into that.
Yeah, I would say I have low confidence about the numbers we were provided months ago. I would want that revisited so that we have a clear understanding of income, expenses, all of that before we can even evaluate this.
Does
Okay.
oh, sorry. Does the revenue from Good Hope go into Fund 10 or Fund 80?
Fund E was a
Did you want to add to this?
May I?
Yes, please, I think.
Jim
Best to
Beckman,
get your,
2226 West Arbor Avenue, Glendale.
yeah, can you speak?
If you go back and search the records from 21-22, you'll find that it was a break-even year for Good Hope.
Okay,
We didn't lose money, we didn't make money, we were about break-even at Good Hope.
okay,
That year, I was still here that year, and that was always our goal. Was Good Hope had to be cost neutral to the district, and everything was paid out of Fund 80 and everything was paid out of Fund 80. So it didn't come out of Fund 10. I don't know what's happened since the 21-22, since I haven't seen those budgets. I don't know if any tenants have changed since that time. There's a lot of deferred maintenance in that building. We know that. In the 20 years I was here, we basically put about $500,000 in that building, and that was it.
well,
So it wasn't a cost drain to the district. It was,
Right.
it was a plus to the district. If I just editorialize for 1 minute, I think Good Hope has always been an asset to this district. But understanding what the situation is right now, something has to happen. I would hope that the board looks at this and takes puts everything on the table, we could say. What can happen with that property? Glendale, we're landlocked. We don't have green space. We don't have a lot of recreation space, some parks. What can the school district do? Maybe in conjunction with the city, maybe in conjunction with other organizations, healthcare organizations. There was an idea floated years ago about putting a sports complex on the east end of that property. I think, Andy, you might even remember. And drawing in basketball, volleyball, indoor baseball, all kinds of things like that. So hopefully we just don't sell the property as a one-time fix and you put the money in the bank and it's gone. What else can happen? Valuation is tough, as your gentleman will tell you, because it's based on end use. What will go in there, we know that, we've done that study years ago. Whatever the end usage is going to determine what the cost or what the value of that property is, because right now it's not on the tax rolls. So the city doesn't have an idea what the value of the property is, but where do you find 14 to 16 acres of green space in Glendale? So I would just add that when the whole comes up, I think it's a bigger discussion than just, well, let's sell it for this, or, my personal opinion and also as an ex-facility director, is the building savable? I don't know. I haven't been in it 3 years. I don't know what the building looks like today. So it's a tough question, but just know that it was a cost neutral my entire time here. And we maintained it that way and kept the tenants in that way, and Glendale Heights has been a great tenant. Right? And I think they have to be a part of the discussion going forward. What happens to them? They've done a good job. So
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that perspective.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, so that's sort of what we know, right? Does anybody have any questions at this point or? Bob?
Thoughts, yes.
Okay, yeah, I think we could just engage in dialogue. Or is there more that you want to cover before we get to sort of a dialogue point?
No, I think I would echo a lot of what was just said. I will just add that we did do a introductory meeting with the mayor and the city planner, simply to initiate a conversation. I'm sorry?
Who was we? Sorry. We.
It was Allison, Lindsay, and myself, and that was in December. So the three of us sat down with the mayor and with the city planner, just again, with no direct plan for next steps by any means, and in no way looking to get out ahead of any planning, but simply to get an understanding of the city's current master plan for this portion of the community, right? So if we were to consider next steps in alignment with what was just stated in that comment, we'd want to be sure that we were maximizing the value of that property, and then obviously if to kind of work in collaboration with the city if possible, to be sure that the use aligns with what they see as the long-term best use as well. And so it was a healthy conversation. I think we spent probably about a half an hour, 45 minutes with them. No key takeaways, no immediate next steps, but that did open up a collaborative dialogue that I think could continue if that was a potential next step that the board wanted to take.
Right, what, I think, Carl, did you have?
I do, but other people.
Oh, okay.
So I appreciate the conversation here. I want to put a couple things out there. I think that we have to have this conversation. Jim, I think you and I are aligned on, all the benefits of having that space. And we've all been presented that, we had neutrality in terms of cost in and cost out on there. We've had a lot of community businesses, including the daycare that are in there. These are considerations. These aren't positive, but there's a lot, and there's a lot of space, and there's a lot of green space. So things are that, as I see it, is that you have to be flexible. You don't necessarily have to sell all the land. If you sell all the land, you sell part of it, you keep part of it. That's one thing that I think is really important. Two is, while I really don't want to sell it, we might have some way out of it. Obviously, you can't resist it. But I would caution everyone to say, look, I've seen a number of properties that were owned by school districts that have been sold off that really have only temporarily plugged the butthole. We may need that, and I recognize that we may be in that position because where we are. But I don't know. I mean, it's only the benefit of selling it is a one-time benefit if we sell it. All right, it's not going to increase our tax revenue beyond that. It is not going to increase the revenue limit. The only people who will get it if it's developed into something private are going to be the city. Okay, the city, if they develop it and it becomes taxable, they get the tax benefit of that. I don't think that there is a viable commercial use there either. I think it's institutional. I think it ought to continue to be institutional. And my preference would be that if it needs to be sold, that we sell to an institution. Because that institution, whether private or public, it could be on taxable or city service rolls, and then have some chip in that we don't already have. So we could get the benefit as a city of getting payment for services, and residents that might benefit us, but for the district, we can be flexible, and for the community around us, and I live a block away. I don't want to see, frankly, cheap apartments go up there and let a developer make all the profit off of that. Also, across the street from the land is a giant undeveloped parcel that was torn down that used to be a greenhouse. And as long as I've been in the house, the city, my house, the city's master plan has always been to develop a road, to put in residents, whatever. They've had apartments that they were going to put in there. They would have CBRS that would be put in there. Nothing's come to fruition. I don't think that while it would be great to have more of a community, to have more residences, there's going to be a lot of buildings there that goes on unless it's high density. And again, I mean, you have Bayshore, you have Bender Road, you have two things on Bender Road. This is the former senior facility. I think it's been rebranded apartment now. So we have a lot of apartments in the community, and I think that it could sit there. If we sell it, I would strongly advocate selling to another institution. Because if we want to make the money off of it, we're only going to use it once as a district. Yes, we have an obligation to the community at large. That's something to consider. I'm not going to be here when that happens. I'm just laying out what I think I would be looking at if I were still on board. But I think that we want to keep the community as close to what it is as possible without disrupting it. And so those are kind of, things that, come to my mind. I would also make sure that you get good comparables and that you have multiple inputs on what the value is of that facility when it comes to it. So I'm not taking a stand on whether or not we should do something or not, but I think those are important items. And I just want to lay that out.
Can I there was just one thing you said where I was like, oh, I just really want to fund, but I help, just in terms of like it only being a one-time benefit, I think to the point that Jim was making is that it could be a benefit to the community if we think about, and our students. So I just want to make sure that we are thinking like, depending on what will happen, but if hypothetically you sell and you do get like a partner to come in and you create a green space for sports complexes, that could greatly benefit. I think we've heard through a lot of our surveys around our children's social and emotional well-being, that's one thing they lack in this community. It's a place to be, to exist, to have positive interactions and socialize outside of school. And so I just want, that's my one thing where I was like, oh, actually, I could see where this could have an ongoing benefit to the community and a benefit for the students in our district. And I think Mike's point, because we've had some discussion, is we just want to think about if we do get to a place where we say this makes sense to sell, what limitations we can put on selling. And sort of once it's sold, to whom you sell, then like, do you lose all that capacity? So I have questions about selling to an institution because we have a St. Augustine moving in the next 2 years. So if you are to sell it to another institution who then decides this is going to cost too much to renovate or some, these are all hypotheticals, but you see it change hands again, and it goes to another, maybe St. Augustine, and that's now a detriment to our district. So that's not worth a one-time plug, either for me in terms of money. But I just wanted to respond to that. And I think it's worth it to kind of put our values out there, I think, so that as we move forward, we can frame the conversation in that, but also we are not making a decision tonight, right? But it's good for us all to sort of say where our heads are at, and most importantly, what information do we want and need to really give this consideration?
I've only said one thing though, and I agree, there are benefits and disadvantages all around. You're absolutely right. These are considerations I'm throwing out. But in terms of athletic facilities, we have the club literally down the street.
$200 a month for a family to
We
belong
have the
to.
Haley Tennis Center, we have the JCC, we have tennis courts.
Those all cost,
and-
right, but
There are a lot of places with, and I want to keep green space money. I'm just saying that there's a lot of places for athletics. But again, you're just gonna open the door for someone else to go in and charge $200 a month.
right, and that's sort of the considerations we'd have to make, and what restrictions could be put.
I agree, which why, look, my preference would be to find a way to keep it, but if we're going to sell it, those are the considerations that, I would do. And again, I'm not going to be here, all I can do is, offer what I hope it was.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll echo Andy. I think well stated. In Cudahy, the conversation was very similar, and in that case, they actually elected to require that any interested buyer actually submit a proposal to the district, and the proposal had to include the kind of proposed tenant redevelopment, what that would look like, what uses would go in. They had some opt-outs as a part of it to ensure that they followed through on that, so that they actually defined what a community improvement would look like. They identified some uses they were not interested in. So in that case, they were in fact not interested in a competing school moving in. So that was not an option. Any I think adult oriented businesses, that would not be an option. And so they were very clearly stipulating how they would define positive versus negative impact. And in that case, they actually preemptively rezoned the property to ensure one step further that, they were able to control what they could control. And so there are lots of different things we can talk more about to be sure that whatever next step, if this were the path, was in as close of alignment with the board's vision as possible.
One other quick thing that I keep forgetting to mention is that, it's also one of the 3 locations where we build in the city. And that's, maybe it's less ratio the city gets full, but it's something just to keep in mind.
Yeah. As Carla, right,
And it's quick to this mic,
okay, well, push the green button, good to go.
Thank you.
like Jeopardy.
Okay, I have a question for Jim, if that's okay.
Sure.
So when you said that it's cost neutral, are you saying that the revenues from Good Hope covered the expenditures, or are you saying there didn't have to be a fund transfer from 10 to 80?
The revenues from rent covered the expenditures
Okay, and
and
then,
covered the salaries. And the custodial was charged to Fund 80. Part of my salary was charged to Fund 80 that to manage Good Hope. So it was a cost neutral to the district. But it was built into the Fund 80 budget before they capped the Fund 80 budget in, I don't know, what was that, 2018, 2019? They capped the Fund 80 budget then, but we were able to build enough into the Fund 80 to cover Good Hope's cost. And the revenue from the tenants covered that. But now, as I said, the last budget I looked at was the 21-22 budget. I don't know what happened in the 2 or 3 budgets since then. So yes, to answer your long question, long answer, but it's yes, Ben.
Okay.
It-
and then, sorry, one more. You said, for maintenance, you spent about 500,000 over.
So that was an additional $500,000 we spent. We took a loan out in 2013 to upgrade the fire alarm system, and we relocated Glendale Heights from the north end of the building to the south end of the building. And we replaced all the lighting at that time. It wasn't LED at that time. It was still fluorescent, but with high efficiency. But that was over and above our normal maintenance, but the maintenance budget for Good Hope was very small. We got by on a shoestring there, basically.
Okay, and then I just have a third thing.
Sure.
This might be for Gus, but can you explain to people how typically a place like Good Hope would, because we're saying funded 80, 110, could you maybe explain how a place like Good Hope might be funded?
Okay. The state requires, because they will pay aid on expenses in Fund 10. So that Fund 10 expenses have to be educationally related. It has to be education. As I understand it, Good Hope not being an educational, it's not part of the educational program that of the school district. That's Fund 80 is called a community service fund, of which the district can, there's numerous ways that they can provide community service to the community, and all of that revenue and all of that expense stays in Fund 80 because the state is not about to pay any money for community service. They only pay for educational. So they're very strict on how you have to separate the funding. And so the ultimate goal would be, obviously, as was stated here, is that you would definitely want to make that you're using that facility or renting that out, you want to make it revenue neutral. You do not have the luxury of, if you can make it profitable, you do not have the luxury of transferring the money from the community service fund to the educational fund. You do not, DPI, the state will not allow you to do that, not allow you to supplement income and get around, the controls they set and stuff like that. So if one were to make it profitable, that money that would be there would stay in that Fund 80. Obviously, you could use it for these types of major renovation projects and things like that, or to help offset money to keep the building functioning and the property working and things like that. Obviously, if this district looked at it, decided they wanted to offer other types of building services, whatever the case may be, obviously all of that would be still stay in the Fund 80 portion of the district funding, but obviously you could expand. You could offer other, other buildings, other things like that. But it's going to be its own separate entity.
So, and I don't know if because I don't understand this that well, but would it be possible that if you did have revenue in Fund 80, there is a possibility of transferring to Fund 10, but that would be the levy subtracted from, so you could reduce the mill rate.
If you were making a profit or even a break even, I mean, you would have an option of saying that if you're breaking even or making a profit, you do not need to levy for Fund 80.
Right.
To do anything, so that would be, that would become a levy neutral, it would have no impact on the taxpayer if you were breaking even, things like that. If you're looking at having to fix the building, there's a number of different ways, and there's a couple different ways that can be done, but that's.
Yeah, what I recall is that a couple of years ago, there was an expense on the building that was unexpected that had to come out of Fund 10 because we did not have Fund 80 reserves, right? You guys, I think that was before my time. Do you remember that? Yeah, boiler or something, several $100,000. There was no Fund 80 balance to cover it, so it had to come out of our Fund 10. Yeah. And that's, do you have any more questions?
No.
Because that's where, I mean, I'm just looking at cold hard facts, right? My counterpoint to you. We can talk about community and all that, but we also have to look at fiscal cold hard facts. And so if I were to ask, like when you say you were revenue neutral in 21, 22 or 2021, that's not taking into account $6 million in deferred maintenance. That is not factored into that neutral number. So if we were to look long-term, if we take the long view, let me finish, the long view of a cost of a building, revenue neutral has to look longitudinally. Let's look at a decade. Let's look at how much money we have to spend on this building. How much rent do we bring in? What are our maintenance costs, upgrade requirements? Hey, what if we became modern 21st century ADA compliant? Another $3 million. That all factors into revenue neutral for any one given year. That's what I want to see. So I worry about saying that something changed in 3 years when we have so much deferred expenses. So, I mean, we had pretty high quality architects and contract construction people come through and tell us that we have huge costs coming down the line on Good Hope. It's a fantastic dream. It's starting to feel like a pipe dream about building a green space. Nobody wants that more than me, but where are we going to come up with $6 million for renovating a building to keep it alive when we're running a deficit budget for our core mission, which is here at Glen Hills and Parkway? So that's the cold hard fact I'm factoring into this. I'm just sharing what's on my mind here. I want to know, and I hate to even put this on Gus and Todd. I mean, we got to figure out when we're going to have this dialogue, but I'd like to know rent streams. I don't know if rents have been raised. I don't know if they're at market. Are you thinking about that too? Yeah, I would like to know our rent streams. I would like to know our cost streams. I feel like I'm missing information. I think we need more than one market evaluation, Mike. So I've been asking for that for months and months. So it'd be great if we can get that. I assume there are brokers out there. Oh, okay.
I'm getting three, an updated one, Colliers, two other ones. That was
Okay.
a suggestion from Todd.
Okay. So, and I would really love the numbers reworked to evaluate whether we are in fact losing money, factoring in core maintenance and upgrade needs, right? And Andy, I understand what you're saying about the benefit being a one-time financial infusion, but I think if you have a property that's losing money and that requires a huge amount of maintenance and that fails to meet modern accessibility standards, not only does that look bad for our district to own a building that's not ADA compliant, we're also subsidizing private businesses, which cold hard fact, why should a public school be doing that? We need to get out of that business. And our staff, I mean, I know we're being partly subsidized by Fund 80, except 2 years ago, we weren't. We had to take money out of Fund 10, out of our school budgets to maintain a building for tenants, for private businesses. I mean, it starts to feel much more weighty than we're just selling it for a one-off. I mean, there are a lot of reasons that any reasonable private landowner would consider selling this property. So I just think it's a rich stew, and I'm kind of going on here, but I come back to needing to have some long-term information on rents and expenses and wanting a handful of evaluations. And then I think we can have a rich public dialogue about whether we continue to hold on to a property and effectively subsidize other people's businesses. I want to focus right now on, you know, our core mission. And I know I sound harsh here, but it's a perspective.
So very similar to Carla's thoughts. I think we have, so in the fall, when we first talked about this, I asked when the last time rent was, but in fact, we changed the policy to say that our rent was going to be consistent with market values. I don't know if that ever happened or what, and I actually had asked at that point in time what the current contracts were that were in place. And so how could we analyze that, look forward to those discussions that might need to be had. And again, there's been a lot that's happened, but I have a sense that that probably isn't something that we've been able to address at this point, but it is key. And certainly, I mean, please understand, like, I understand, I get what you're saying, but the deferred maintenance is something that it comes at some point, right?
If I could just comment, and Carla, I'm not gonna pick a fight tonight, but I will come back.
I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just
The-
offering
When
my
I talk about revenue neutral, the expenses of the building, just the operating expenses, salaries, benefits, electricity, gas, power, light, what, the whole thing was covered by the income of the renters, okay? No, deferred maintenance was not in that budget, but it wasn't in the school budget either. I fought for years when I was here, and the R word was a dirty thing. When I bring it up, I get shot down over at the office there about
What's
running a
the word?
referendum for capital, not just
Oh,
for capital, because,
Stay alive.
because capital would fix that building.
Right. And
That's
what
where
I
you get your
remember.
$6 million.
That's exactly what I remember, is
A
that you
capital
had advocated.
referendum, if you want to keep the building,
Yep.
it's a capital referendum for that building. And 6 million is cheap in today's world for referendums, I can tell you. Look at the numbers that came in yesterday.
I remember you
So-
advocating.
And I advocated that for years, but, and for this building and for Parkway School. So, you know, that's where the money comes from.
Right.
That,
You can advocate again.
well, I will,
Keep
but,
advocating.
but that went on deaf ears for many years.
Yes.
And all we did was keep running an operating referendum and kick the can down the road. So.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, is that in past practices, it's been an unpopular conversation. So please understand, we're not trying to suggest that this weighs on your shoulders.
Well, it doesn't. I'm
right.
retired. I have a lot.
Yeah. We certainly do as a district need to have a far better understanding of what the cost of that building is or what the benefit of that building is to our district. We have entities in that building right now that are community resources. They're important resources that we don't want to discount, but also they are private entities and it's something that we have to keep in mind. So I think those partnerships are things we never want to overlook. And yet we have to be broad in our perspectives and really well informed. And so a true perspective of what is happening with Good Hope financially and the impact on the district is really essential. The other thing that I want the audience to understand is those numbers that we discussed tonight have nothing to do with converting that building back into an educational site. Right. There's additional millions of dollars that would be required for that building to become educational again. So we literally are only talking about continuing it as a Fund 80 resource for this district at almost $10 million of building needs. And frankly, we already have ADA compliance issues in the buildings that we're using. So that has to be dealt with. So it's going to be complicated. I agree it's a stew, and I agree that, you know, one of the things we need is we need to become much more familiar with the vision plan and where we are. I think the other thing to keep in mind is, yes, you can change the zoning for properties, but guess what? I was on the planning commission. You can change those zones again. So like, that's great to be proactive, but I've sat in that seat. So it's we have to be very careful at how we consider these things and be broad, but also very, very well informed. And the first thing we need to know is the impact on our current district with our current situation and the projected numbers.
Can I just add, because we've talked about community partnerships, and this is the one meeting that I know it's Cheryl, right? Cheryl from the daycare, right, has not. Oh, hi. Oh, it's been on your. Yeah, has not been able to attend, but
Thank you for coming, Jim.
thank you so much,
I
Jim.
have another meeting, believe it or not.
Oh, retired life, okay. So, and she did reach out, and I told her we are just starting the discussion tonight, and I will say that I've been in contact with her, Allison's been in contact with her. I know Andy has been in contact with the school that's there. And so we are definitely keeping that in mind, and I don't want to speak out for Cheryl, but you know, she understands we may have a decision to make, and they're just asking to keep them in the loop and give them time. They would need time, and that is a big piece of it. And so I do think that we should keep considering what the community engagement piece is gonna look like on this, right? But we obviously have to have the data and the information. And please, yeah.
Hi, Stephanie Hill, 2147 West Marne. I'm the director of Glendale Heights. We do need time, but in saying that we need time, we need like 18 months to move 250 students, 400 parents, you know, all 50 staff that are relying on us. We need to not have a gap in care. So that 18 months that we need needs to be our actual planning time. So right now we're looking at options, but we're not, because we don't know if you're gonna sell. And if we pull the trigger on that, and you guys don't sell, we're between a rock and a hard place, right? So if we do pull the trigger on making a move and trying to build our own building or, you know, renovate somewhere, not that there's many places in Glendale right now to renovate for 250 students. It will take 18 months from that time that we buy a building to renovate it or to build a building. So we need 18 months past of making a decision for the district, which whatever you guys need to do, we understand that we're okay, but we need 18 months.
I just want to point out too, and I mean, I don't have that much more to add, but we have busing going to and from before and after school. And so I completely understand what Carla is saying, and I completely understand the argument. But they've also been part of the general through COVID. They,
25 years.
money that's gone into the building, and I don't know, have dollars left, but my understanding is that Glendale Heights support a lot of their own dollars to upgrade of the building.
Yes.
In terms of security, in terms of facilities on their end, which we benefit from as a school district, which those improvements, you know, I don't know how much that's factored into it. I think that, you know, there, at the end of the day though, what we don't have is full idea of the community expenses are. And I agree with what Karen and what Carla are saying about having that, but we haven't really had that historically brought to us, you know, in a specified form. And we do need that as one of the information. I don't want to rush to it either, but you know, you point out the point, which is that if you, and I don't know what the extent of your lease is, if it's month to month, if it's a term, whatever it is, but we wouldn't be able to close on, well, we might be able to close on something in some period of time, you know, and then, you know, what it is, would have to terminate the tenancy in theory and all that. But all I'm saying is someone might want tenants out before they close on the building. That might delay it. So there's all these different considerations. We need to know what the income and expenses are. We also need to get, like Carl was talking about, an idea of what these proposals are.
Yeah.
And it's
So-
that's starting place.
Let's
Yeah.
get some action items then out there. So Mike, what, are there more? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yes, yes, oh, please.
Michelle Sorsey, 6525 North Range Line Road. I also work at Glendale Heights for the past 5 years. And when I do a tour for the families that come in, they love the point on how much of a partnership we have with Parkway School. Now granted, it's not as strong as here at Glen Hills. We do have that partnership, but middle school's a little different and everything. But they love how we work with the teachers in the K-4 program. We meet with those teachers to make sure that the kids are on the same page. We have permission from a family who's got a child in 2nd grade who's just been diagnosed. Can we reach out to the school? Can we talk to the teachers? We want to make sure we're working with the children because our goal is working with the children. They're our focus here. We have families who will come because we have buses that go to the school district. And the thought of losing Good Hope School, we are really truly one of the only centers this side of Glendale. There is one other center
It's much smaller and they don't have opportunity to take more children. And, you know, it's a parent preference for that center. But we really have to be cautious on what are we looking for parents? Because as Steffi pointed out, we have actually 278 children enrolled there. Where are 278 children going to go? And out of those 278 children, 90 of them are school-age children. Milestones cannot take that many children over at Parkway. So where are you going to have 90 children being left after school now? And parents are going to be fumbling, looking for a spot. I mean, we're having a hard time trying to find a place. I mean, Good Hope has been awesome with us as a partnership. It really, really has been awesome. We have 17 rooms. When I started there 20 plus years ago, we had 6 rooms. And that's how much we have grown with the community. We are willing to work with the school district if you need to do this or to do that or to help out. And there are some things that the school district doesn't realize what we do there. I mean, the fire inspection, it was on me to take Jim around and show them and take him through places. Because both maintenance people here and at Parkway couldn't see the building. So they said, Michelle knows that building better than we do. Take him in there. When the chemical guys come once a month, we are the ones that take them down to the boiler room. When the North Shore Water Department comes, we are the ones who do that. When people come in to take a look, it's up to us. So we do much more than just pay rent for the school district. I want to make sure you guys understand that. We help out the school district very, very much. Our goal is to stay there really bad. We put in playground equipment. We have a splash pad. We got, you know, a playground for our school age kids. It's all set up. It's an investment that we knew we would be having to leave if for some reason we were asked to leave. So I'm just asking you to think, yes, I thought the same thing, sell and help us get out, but to take a look at a much, much bigger. And then my last question is, does the rec program pay for the rent of the field? So like when they have their softball games, their football games, and all of that, is that something that we are getting rent for? The tennis court? Tennis court?
Right, so yeah, that's a great question. We will add, right, I think we need to have a better understanding of the usage and cost and maintenance, all of that. So my question, so Mike is right now procuring 3 evaluations. Do you have an idea of when you'll have those?
No, my hope is by middle to late this month. So I'm reaching out to 3 additional brokers that do this type of work, hoping to get 2 more opinions of value. And I've also asked the firm that did the first one to just update theirs now that we're 8 months since they did the last one. So the goal is to have 3 opinions of value for the property, as well as that's the opportunity to request a proposal for their services. So just you have that, whether you need it or not, that's at least a competitive moment to make that request. And then from there, I'm more than happy to support the district further gathering and putting together the presentation on what we do know and kind of helping continue this conversation going forward.
That's the next action item. We sort of need like a packet put together about Good Hope that addresses all of the things that have been talked about. So what would a reasonable amount of time be to anticipate that could be completed, and who would complete that?
So I actually just sent an invite to Teresa, Gus, and Mike Charlton for next week to include some of these questions. What I have is list of tenants, what we are taking in monthly for rent, the lease payments. I added the piece about the rec program, if they're paying for reports. what are our monthly costs going into the building? What do the actual lease contracts look like? So that's how I started with, let me know.
But it would be historical.
Rent history.
Rent history.
I don't know what's reasonable to go back or what kind of records you have.
But I can at least know by next week how much we have this immediately and an idea of.
And what do we got one?
And expense history, rent and expense, right? That's the idea. I understand what Jim is saying. Revenue neutral on real time ops, but
Except actually, I think
except.
what Gus was explaining is that you can be revenue generating and use that in Fund 80 to
Right.
be proactive. It's just that prior practices and prior administrations absolutely wanted to avoid those kinds of discussions.
Yep.
And frankly, I think a lot of districts are in this position right now, and it doesn't get cheaper to fix buildings. It just gets more expensive.
Yeah. Especially the last couple of years.
Oh, God, yeah.
Skyrocket.
No, I think, Mike, if you would have additional insights into what we should be looking for a packet, for a historical building and the revenues impact.
Would you be okay with him working with them to just like flush out that?
I'd rather have a comprehensive packet.
Exactly.
I would also like specific attention paid to, if possible, the issue in terms of comparables of the Dunwood School sale and the high school sale.
So comparable.
Dunwood Elementary School was converted to Chiswick and then the memory care facility. And that was a similar plot of land, the upper field way.
So I can work offline too with Mike and this team to kind of get that pack, like what that information is. So if something comes up between now and then too, just send that to us so that we can incorporate it. So my thought would be by a, May board meeting? We might just be, is that too soon to say?
I would say May board meeting.
May board meeting?
As I'm listening here, what I'm hearing, not knowing anything about homeschool, is I'm hearing bits and pieces of lots of things. And trying to pull all of this into a comprehensive,
I'd say maybe June, Cal.
maybe it could be June, comprehensive, because it's gonna take, there's gonna be, I think you're gonna need a lot of discussion once we put everything together as to here's where we're at. There's a number of avenues. If you decided to keep it, there's a number of avenues that one could go down. One, it could be some of these things we're talking about. Could it be handled via friend? Could it be handled via a referendum? And then the community will that's all the on a construction type thing. Then the community has its say as to basically they'll be saying what they want with that building. Taxpayers will be saying what they want.
That's a key point. I mean, and this is the one thing, I mean, in addition, obviously, people were there, but people have seen properties sold, and we definitely need to have the community voice on that, anything. But that's last thing I'll say.
Yeah, but I think what I'm hearing is, and you could talk about this all night, but what I'm hearing is.
Maybe a special session or.
We need to pull everything.
We need information.
We need to pull everything together, and there's a lot of different pieces that need to be pulled together in this, so that you can have an intelligent discussion to decide ultimately what you're going to do and come up with it, you're gonna come up with a plan for that piece of property, whether it's selling or whether it's continuing to operate or how it's gonna do, and you need some time do that. It's gonna, because there's a lot of different, if I'm listening tonight, there's a lot of different pieces to this discussion.
So
let us.
I would say let's look to revisit it at our June Cal. It's an update on, this is the information we have so far, maybe this is what we couldn't get, this is what we need. Talk about how we want that discussion to keep moving forward. I don't know, does that sound okay with everybody?
And you guys have come back for that discussion.
Yeah, absolutely, I'm good to hear.
Good.
Maybe can I ask you to make the home,
That would.
Would elementary school approximately Bayside,
Okay.
and the schools up with you.
All right, I want to be mindful of time. It's 7, I'm sorry. But this was the opening discussion, and I think it's just important that everybody got to say what they needed to say. So, thank you, Mike. I can follow up with you offline. I don't think there's any more. Okay.
Sounds great.
Anything else? Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I have good action for next step. Thank you, everybody, for the conversation. And Danielle, we can connect offline and look forward to being with everybody in June.
Bye. Great, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We are moving on. So we have two folks here from School Perceptions who is helping us draft a community survey. Oh, it is better. Okay. And so we have Rob and Scott. Thanks for waiting it out.
You betcha.
What has been shared with the administrative team and the board is a draft that was put together after some conversations I had with them, after some feedback. Well, primarily through conversations I've had with them. And then we also had received feedback from administration sort of after the fact. So we have got a couple drafts that are in motion. So I talked with them about how best to have this conversation. And I think we have a good plan, which is, well, why don't you guys take it away and sort of
You bet. This is what you pay us for, right? I'm going to share my screen and kind of show you. It's been a bit since we worked with Glendale-River. It's been a hot second. We did your community survey in fall 2010. If you were on the board then, our name might sound familiar to you. And then we did a staff survey for you a couple of years back in 2019. So if you were on the board then, you may recognize our name. But if you weren't, I want to talk a little bit about what Scott and I do, and maybe just as importantly, what we don't do, what we're in the business of doing and what we're not, because that's a pretty hard line in the sand. But let us do a few introductions and then talk about the good stuff, which is your survey. So the two of us here on the left, Scott, if you want to briefly introduce yourself, just so you're present as well.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Gerard, a project manager and communications specialist with School Perceptions. Been with the company for a few months now and excited to continue working on the project with Glendale-River Hills here.
Scott's a writer by trade. He was a journalist, so I think I write the most genius things, and then Scott tells me I'm a fool and that nothing I say makes sense, and then I rewrite it, which is really helpful. So we always write these in pairs, and just for availability too. If you would need us for a board meeting and one of us isn't available, then certainly the other one can be. The two folks on the right are integral to the process, but work a little bit more behind the scenes. So Carrie Utterman from our team makes sure that the right people get the right survey at the right time, and certainly helps out with report writing, and same for Beverly. Beverly is really making sure that with your printing partners, that we get this survey to the right people within your community, and she also helps out with report writing as well. What we want to focus on this evening is to think big picture about the survey strategy and not necessarily the words in the survey draft that we are about to show you. And I know that sounds very strange, but you'll see what we mean in just a second. But is it the right tone? Is it the right tenor? Is it the right message that you want to share with your community? And we want to make sure it also sounds like Glendale-River Hills and the board members signing the survey, and not like Rob and Scott at School Perceptions. The corollary to that is, are we asking the questions that will get you the data that you need for your decision-making processes this spring and into this summer? The other way to say that, I guess, is wordsmithing is very, very important. It's just not important for this evening. It's important, but it's not urgent. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll spend 20, 30 minutes wordsmithing something only to realize that the question it culminates into is not going to help you. And then we've wasted a lot of time and a lot of your time going through your draft and ultimately realizing that it's not necessarily what we need.
This session.
All right.
That's good.
That's why I'm plugged in.
We're good. Yeah, sorry.
One thing, and this is maybe where we could equally make everybody mad, because we'll say no, we get very sensitive to length. One be in the range of about 1,400 to 1,800 words. Right now we're at 1,769. So let's say we shoot for the middle and we're at 1,600. We're about 200 words beyond that. Every 100 words that we add to a survey, you're going to lose 1% of your response rate. I'll talk a little bit more about our response rate in a second, but it's usually around 16 to 17%. So if we lose 2% of those folks, that means that 1 in 8 people have thrown away your survey for no other reason other than it's too long and they don't want to read it all. So we get very sensitive to length because we don't want you to pay for something that ultimately is not a good use of your money and doesn't ultimately lead to the results that you want. There are many, many ways to communicate a bunch of things, but what's in the survey has to be tip-top importance. And we will definitely push you into what are other ways to communicate. Are they newsletters? Are they FAQs on your website? Because we just will run out of real estate in terms of your survey. We also write with you and we write for you. That's what you hire us to do, but we don't write to you. You know way too much. You're way too into the weeds of everything that's been going on in the district. We're writing for Joe Sixpack, who we'll talk more about that in just a second. But basically, you have to wipe your mind, and you have to. We're writing to the folks that know that you are a line item on their property tax bill. They might go to the middle school basketball game and might not make it past the concession stand, but they care about schools as well. That's our audience here. Relatedly, some things that we do and don't do. We are bad marketers, and that's intentional. It is unlawful for you to be swaying folks in a survey because you are citing this in your official capacity as board members. So anything that sounds like vote yes or vote no is a big no-no. You cannot do that as signers of the survey. All you can do is say, here is the information, and then you as survey takers need to make the ultimate decision. Very similar to what you would do on election day. All you can say is show up and vote. You can't have a vote yes or vote no stance as the official board member. You can do that on your own time, but you can't be as part of your official capacity. Talked a little bit about survey material, FAQ material. The other thing that we'll talk about is timeline. And I'm actually going to finish with that in just a second. In order to make this work well, your community and your taxpayers have to have two things. They have to feel like they're having a voice in your plan, and they have to have a clear understanding of the plan. If I don't have either, I'm either going to be confused or I'm going to say no right out of the bat because I don't necessarily understand what you're asking me to do. We sometimes call this the quick trip rule. Sometimes I call it the perch rule. While every survey is highly customized, the words that must reflect how Joe taxpayer speaks. This is what makes our accuracy percentage so high. And this is another thing that I wanted to be clear about what we do and don't do. We are not in the business of seeing referendums get passed. There may be companies that do that, and that's not us. This is especially truthful after last night. The surveys that went to referendum and they passed, and the data told us it was going to pass, that is a win in our world because we made an accurate prediction. There were things on the ballot last night where our data told us it would fail, and the district took that to ballot anyhow, and it failed. That is a win in our world. That is a success because that is an accurate prediction. We use the data to say this is what's going to happen. Regardless of the outcome, win or loss, we judge our success based on whether we're getting you good data. We are not in the business of seeing a referendum pass. And I want to be very upfront about that, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. The other way to say this is it the way I hear people talking at 5:30 p.m., eating perch and drinking old fashions? If not, that is not good words for a survey. If it is, then great, let's roll with it. Going over to your timeline, and then I'll pause for questions before I get over to the good stuff, which is your actual survey. We may need to bump this back, and this is fine. This is purely a draft right now. You need to take as much time with this as you need to get out a good survey, but let's work backwards. If the data tells you to pursue a referendum, it sounds like you're looking at a November 5th election date. The deadline for you to get something to the county clerks is August 23rd. So we don't want to give you data on August 22nd or even the week before, even in August. That's way too soon. We want to give you plenty of time to digest this and understand what it is you're going to do next. In fact, we want to give you a couple of board cycles to do that. So right now, we are slated to give you your survey results in about mid-June. And we often recommend don't make any decisions that night. Simply, understand and digest the data. Come back in July, decide whether or not you're going to pursue a referendum. And if so, then take August and work with your school legal team to finalize what the actual resolution says. So in other words, we want to make sure that you have plenty of time to digest the results. Continuing to work backwards, whatever that date is, right now it's slated for June 18th, subtract about 3 weeks. That's about the time we need to put together a report, analyze the data, and allow some of those USPS regulars to come back in. So right now we have your deadline slated as May 20th. There's a little wiggle room there, but the later it goes into the end of the year, the more people don't want to think about school. They're thinking about where they're going to go on vacation right after school gets It doesn't mean you can't do a survey then, but we get a little nervous about response rates as the end of the year is approaching. If we're gonna meet that deadline, we want the survey open to be about 2.5 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks, depending on when it lands in mailboxes. It will not be exact. We're subject to the whims here of the printer, and we're subject to the whims of USPS bulk mailing, which means that not every route will get it on the same day. In fact, there can be a spread sometimes of up to 4 days between when the first people get it in their mailbox and when the last people get it in their mailbox. So right now we have this landing in mailboxes the week of April 29th to meet the May 20th deadline. Printing and USPS bulk mailing needs about 3 weeks to do their work. So right now, tentatively, we have this scheduled to go into print next week. If that feels rushed, and I don't want that to happen, if that feels rushed, and I understand it may, we could bump this back by about a week or a week and a half, but then everything else down the line gets bumped back by a week or a week and a half as well. And we could go put this into a little bit after Memorial Day, maybe very early June, and then you'd be looking at getting data back maybe around the 4th of July, and then you'd have kind of maybe 1.5 board cycles to go through what you're going to do next. So there's some hard deadlines, there's some more fixed deadlines. But I understand that's a lot of talking to begin with before we even get to the survey. So let me pause there. And if there's any questions for Scott and I, either in what the goal for tonight is or in terms of how this timeline shakes out, I do want to give time for that.
My gut on the timeline is to keep it as is and to, if it's next week that we'd have to finalize it, it would just be like a special meeting to approve. I think it's important to kind of, to try to adhere to this timeline for the best possible response rate, maybe, I don't know.
What is your accuracy rate?
94.5%. We're actually perfect in Minnesota, not in Wisconsin, but we're close.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So like, you would say they pass and they pass, and then you'd say they fail and then fail.
Yep.
Or you said that they would pass and then they fail, but then the one you couldn't measure would be if you told them they were gonna fail, but then they actually would have passed.
Correct. That's the counterfactual that I'd love to predict. Don't know that. The other thing that's always kind of tricky is, if something goes to ballot that is not what we test, are we right or not? So, but that's kind of what we hope to have happen. So, if we say make up a number, $40 million is not going to fly in the community. So the board says, we'll try for 19.5 and it passes. Are we right? Kinda, we said 40 million, but so that the district listens to the data and changes their plans based on what the community is saying, which is exactly what we'd hope to have happen.
That's interesting. Thanks.
Okay, all right.
Okay, how many total surveys have you done in Wisconsin?
Oh, we have worked with, there's 421 districts. We've worked with 405 or so. We're north of 10,000 surveys, and that's spread over about 950 districts nationwide. Not too many times do I have to make a folder for Wisconsin. We've worked with darn near everybody. We have 66 surveys out for November, community surveys. I think we probably had about 55 for yesterday. So just over the past year, we've worked with about a quarter of districts alone in Wisconsin, and that's just the last 12 months.
Okay, so pretty robust data set. I'm just trying to put the 94% in context.
Yeah, so good question. Over the last 5 years, so not including yesterday, but over the last 5 years, the N is 340. So I have to do my math there. I think it's like 325, whatever 94 to 95% of 340 is.
Okay. All right, let's keep moving.
Yep. So I'm going to purposely zoom out, I guess literally and figuratively in your survey. So I recognize this is not going to be readable right away, but then we will come back and dig into the words a little bit. But I just want to fly through what the structure of the survey is like before I come back to what the actual words say. So we have an 8-page survey, which is very normal, especially when you have a couple of moving parts like your survey here. So in terms of 8 pages, that is not a concern. That's very normal for our work. The pages 1 and 8 are, I don't want to say fixed, but they're more or less kind of standard in terms of what we do. Page 1 will kind of lay out in as few words as possible. What the heck is this thing landing in my mailbox, and who is it coming from, and what do they want me to do? We'll give some survey directions there, like how do I actually take this thing? And page 8 is maybe the least exciting but most important, and that is the actual one resident at 123 Main Street in Glendale, Wisconsin. In that page, we're subject to some specific USPS directions that we have to follow to make sure that this doesn't get stuck in the mail. So again, maybe the most important, but definitely the least exciting. Otherwise, everything between 2 and 7 is fairly flexible in terms of what we do and where it goes. White space is our friend. You know, the more white space there is, the more when this lands on my table, it doesn't feel like it's landing with a thud. It feels like it's actually something manageable that I can take. So could we really cram this into a 4-page survey? Maybe, but it'd be so thick that I think it would just turn people off. It would feel like homework as it lands on the counter. So, zooming in, how do I actually take this thing before I talk about the words that are in here? There are 2 ways to take it. We'll work with a local printer and we'll work with the district to get the best mailing list possible. If you have one, great. Otherwise, if not, printers have some fancy USPS software that they can take a boundary map of your district and upload it, and they can pull the residences within that map, which includes renters, by the way. It's not just property tax payers, which is important, especially to get renter perspective because they vote. So we'll make sure that at least one lands in every residence as best as we possibly can. From there, I could either fill it out on paper if I don't have reliable internet, or if I just feel more comfortable taking it on paper. There's a business reply envelope that's tucked into there, and it comes directly back to us for processing. Or I can take it online with a one-time use code sprayed right here. So once you get this at home, there will be a 16-character code right here that allows me to take the survey once. But once I take it and I hit submit, that code expires. So if I try to enter it again, it'll say, thanks, but no thanks, who already took your survey. We recognize, though, that there's multi-generational households. There are folks that, maybe more than one adult in the household, spouses, believe it or not, don't always agree. So we always provide you with extra survey access codes and extra printed surveys so that if somebody calls you up and say, hey, I pay taxes here, I want to take this survey too. My wife took mine, I want one too. The answer is always yes, you bet. And we can provide you with some codes to make sure that everybody has their voice heard. But the point is, voices are heard, but nobody's voice is privileged being louder than anybody else's. We also have several translation abilities as well, and as soon as we get this finalized, then we can start to work on.
Right, one moment while we get this back up here.
So.
Full side or not. Full side or not.
I didn't see edits. Like I didn't see Mark.
I know, I don't know, I just noticed this was not, so I don't, this is the school perception that they're gonna talk to us about, but the one that. You should have that same. I don't drive tours now. I'm just running content that says.
Yep, I opened it and it is, it's not the edited version.
Yeah, I was having an issue sharing.
It's where the edits don't show.
But it's not, I think I can too, because we have access. I think I tried to share it, and so maybe that's, it's not the same. How could that be?
Yeah, so we're viewer only. So maybe that's why.
But the edits aren't there.
Yeah, that's right there.
Which email, which one of the emails?
So it's.
But I think the one I shared did the same thing. That's why I like the one I shared.
I have the correct one.
I'm gonna try changing you guys to editor.
Oh, you do?
This is from the email.
Sure, you can do like.
Is it draft 3.2?
No, wait,
Draft
no,
reading.
Try to refresh it.
Oh, this is the admin team. See, okay, but this is the first.
Unless they address him.
She may not have.
Okay.
Yes.
Refresh?
Yeah.
Okay, refresh.
Okay, it's fixed.
It's so much more sense.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I'm seeing it, I'm so sorry, I know, it's no, it happens, right? It all has to do with the level of access.
Okay.
Rob, are you able to speak so we can see if our tech issues are any better? Okay, one moment here. Hold on.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, wait. Oh, no, I heard you. Talk again.
Testing, I'm here, we're ready. Scott and I are
Yep,
here.
we got you. We got you.
Okay. So I heard you talking a little bit about survey edits and survey access and whatnot, and that's great. And that's kind of, I guess that's the first question that Scott and I have for you is, as a survey taker, I need to know what problem is it that you are asking me to solve? And if this issue, if the problem may involve me raising my property taxes, I need to know like what has gotten me to what has gotten the district to this point? What is it, the dominoes that have fallen into place that you may need some extra help with my property taxes?
So I was hoping that maybe some of the administrative team who sort of worked on a draft, so I'm sorry, I had issues sharing the administrative revised draft with that because it was like an access issue, but you guys did see their first revision, right, Rob?
Yes.
Remember,
that's
because we
correct.
talked about it, it was like sort of a
Yep,
different.
Yep, yep,
Could we
yep.
maybe, I'm not keen on having this one up right now.
Yeah.
What could we share? So
They're sharing.
oh, there we go. So I wanted, just before we get into the details of that one, I kind of wanted to make some space to talk about that tone and messaging that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And so if you ask that question again, I would love to invite like our administrative team to respond to that so that we
Yep.
could. Because generally, you told me this is done in conjunction with the board and the administrative team, right? So I'd like to weigh in.
Yeah, so I guess let me ask my question in a different way and then open it up for feedback, because this is where Scott and I need the most help. So I guess the question that Scott and I have is how do we reflect in tone and problem setting what you as the board want it to be? Because right now this is signed by members of the board. So we need to make sure that we're typing this in a way that you feel comfortable with your name being on it. And the way we approach that is, as a survey taker, I need to know why you need my help. The solution might result in a property tax increase or not, but it may result in a referendum. But why? What is the problem that you are asking me to solve? And we can work that in different ways, but I'm not necessarily sure what you want that to be. Is it the operational referendum is expiring? Is it the situation of the last few months? And I guess we say that with, don't talk to each other, I guess, as board members, talk to each other as folks who are casual media readers. What do you want people to know who do need 7 times to hear something before they remember it? Because that old adage is pretty true. What is the problem you're going out to your community with that you want them to solve?
Yeah, I'm happy to go, I mean. We'll discuss
Yeah,
that
we
one.
can.
Yeah. All right, when we look at the problem, we have an impending problem that is sitting right now with the deficit that we are facing, right? In addition to that, we are looking at some historical information about how we funded school districts in the state of Wisconsin and also within the Glendale community. And we look at the historical ask about every 5 years for an operational referendum to support what we do as a school and a district. And so we were coming up on that last year, running out of that referendum. And we've also hit this challenge in our budget right now that exists. As we're looking at that, one of the things that needs to kind of come to mind or for us to be thinking about as a community, and I guess I want to frame out for the community to think about, is the fact that had we not had this bump, we would have been in a position to ask again for an operational referendum to sustain the level of programming and educational experience that our students have in this district, which is outstanding. And so we have some urgency that exists that is unique to our district, but we have a financial impact of the way that schools are funded within the state of Wisconsin that is not created by this urgency, right? And would have existed whether we hit this bump or not. And so there are 2 compounding things that are happening. Ideally, we would have seen this coming and said we needed to ask for this sooner, but we're on the backside of it now. So I think it's important for the community to understand that about what that means and what not funding this means to the educational experience of students within the Glendale community.
And I'll add, so the draft that prior to having administrative info was drafted, was produced a few weeks back and was coming through the lens of having the initial onset of media attention on a problem that we had been dealing with for months, but sort of all of a sudden that was the way it was being communicated out to the community. And so that was really heavy in my mind in terms of like wanting to address that through this, like providing information to our community, because I can acknowledge that was a misstep in not getting it there sooner. At the same time, we were trying to deal with the immediacy of what we were dealing with, but that could have been and should have been on the radar. So I think that this was born from my communication of that, like with school perceptions. And then now that we have navigated that for a few weeks, and sort of, as you see the narrative shift from how it started, I think we have had more opportunity to speak publicly, to address the community. You know, I think we're getting into a good place with that communication. But this still will be the first time that some community members engage with this topic. So that's the part to be mindful of. But so I think that thinking about what that tone is and messaging, and so the difference between what school perceptions and I sort of work together to do and what the administrative team has come up with, they are different in tone. And so I think it's important for the board to weigh in on which avenue we want to go. And if we are leaning towards the administrative version, then I think that's where we should focus and move through the rest of the questions on. That would kind of be my thought. And I don't know if Rob or Scott has any input. And
Yeah, so, well, one thing that and I was looking at the name came up for the various versions here. We don't address the question we just dealt with.
What?
Sale of Goodwood Schools here.
well, that was oh, you mean like asking that question? Oh, great. Well, okay, you're getting ahead of the curve.
Well,
What
you're
information do
asking,
you want?
and
Yes.
like, you know.
Right, that's a great, yes. Oh, that's right. We're talking about the overall what, Dan, but I think that's a great point. That is a great point.
Oh.
Round and round. She shared. You have to share too now.
Thank
You're
you,
modeling
Andy.
sharing.
I get it now.
So what I'm wondering then is, I think that when it comes to setting the tone, I'm curious about what is most successful, because I see this version and I see that it's succinct and it's direct, and I think it addresses broader the issues that are truly at hand.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we have an immediate issue. Yep, mea culpa. Also, here's this other piece. And by the way, if you were paying attention to the returns last night, which I happen to be doing, there were an awful lot of referendums. And there is a lot of referenda on the horizon coming in November.
61% passage rate about with like 97 referendums.
It was, so this is something that's available, it's regular, it's predictable. This shouldn't be novel to people.
Right.
We have one detail. It's a big detail, and it's something that we need to own. But I do think that there's a lot of benefits to this. I think we also would definitely want to seek the guidance around tone and theme to ensure that our survey is predictive of success.
Right.
So that we're stepping in the right direction, right? That would be my insight. I also would just say that some of the ADA things I would like to see moved up in the questions, because I feel like they get a little buried. Choices that people can make.
Okay, well, we can get to, I think we can.
I mean, just for what it's worth.
Sure.
The only other thing I would say, and that I probably wanted to talk about, is one of the things we had discussed is the potential to have kind of a stepped option for referendum, where if we started this year, we took out the portion of referendum that exists, and then next year it would fall into place. And I don't know if there's a benefit to that, or if we actually are not in a position where that would be appropriate. But we have money this year that we won't have next year.
So, okay, yeah, Rob, I think you can weigh in on your question, but I just want to highlight that there are a lot of pieces in here where we need administration to weigh in terms of what those actual numbers and options are going to look like. So that's a good point. And then the cost cutting options, even though they're not highlighted in yellow here, were highlighted in initial copies or versions. And those are where we also need administrative input because they know this part the best, I think, right? And facility planning, I actually believe we did have Mike Hacker's input on what we're looking at, but we would want to also get input from the administrative team on that. So, Karen, I heard your question about just getting advice on tone. You know, I mean, I think Rob, you're aware we have sort of two, and I think it sounds like the board would be leaning towards the administrative revisions. And so, where would your advice fall? And correct me if
yeah, I think my advice comes down on the other side, but again, to reiterate, we will do whatever you think is best because you live there and we don't. I think you're probably a little bit ahead of where the average community member is. I think if you go too far into state aid is broken, regardless of whether you hold that view or not, or whether it's a lot of districts do this. As a community member who hasn't given this much thought, I'm fearful that you're going to run into, we are not like everybody else. Not everybody else had this situation. And I'm afraid it's going to sound salesy or like political spin to say, but actually we're like other people. I'm fearful of that. I think the mea culpa at the beginning is helpful. I think it's goodwill building for people that are where you were at a month ago. That's kind of where most people are going to be. I think they read a couple things in the news, and I don't think everybody else is there yet. I don't think everybody else is ready to think about how Glendale-River Hills is like everybody else in terms of needing an operational referendum. I still think you talk about it, but I think you have to be upfront with, we had this problem, we apologizing, and it's compounding a problem that many other districts have. And oh, by the way, we also have 15% fewer dollars from the state than we did before. So I guess I would disagree a little bit in tone, but that's my recommendation. That's not what you need to do because Scott's and my name is not at the bottom of this. And Scott, I don't know if you want to weigh in or if you disagree. I don't want to speak for you.
No, I think I'd second Rob's perspective on that. I think it's just important to consider where that average community member is who may or may not be as tuned in as you all have had to be over the past few months.
So I have a question about, I noticed in the survey, we never say Parkway and Glen Hill schools. And what I'm hearing in our community is that people are confused. Even a person who's a business manager of another district came to a meeting and seemed confused, or at least conflated our district with Nicolay. So I'm wondering what kind of work we should do in this survey to ensure people know this is not another ask for Nicolay.
Yeah, I think you ripped the Band-Aid
This is
off.
for a separate school district.
Yeah, I think you ripped the Band-Aid off, and I think you're really upfront that says, this is similar to what Nicolay Union did a couple of years ago, but this is a different district. In fact, we did something similar. I wish Mike was still here, in Lake Geneva, because they are also a K-8 and a 9-12 feeder, and we kind of said like some areas of the state, especially in far northern Wisconsin and in southeastern Wisconsin, they have kind of this two structure system where some districts are K-8, some are 9-12, and what they do is a different board. That's not us. Those taxes went to them. We didn't see a dime, from it. So I think we just rip it off and say this is not the same thing.
Okay, I go back and forth. I mean, I'm hearing you and I know you have way more experience than me on this, but I find it so hard to believe that, I'm just thinking about myself. If I got a survey that was like, hey, sorry, we screwed up, we need more money. I don't know. I'm surprised that that's how you start a survey. I mean, I hear you, but I'm a little surprised that that's
I
a
guess
way
how do you
to,
rebuild goodwill the fastest? And that's
yeah.
That's where my mind's at.
We definitely saw it. We definitely saw that the public appropriately is seeking humility and accountability, right? And that was just the public who showed up. And I think, I know I myself, I mean, this has been all encompassing, right? For everybody at these tables, it has been driving our world. And it's very easy to not understand just exactly how far we are from the horizon, compared to some other people. So that I think, I guess I would wonder if there's a way then to arrive at a more compromised tone, where it's like, yep, we take responsibility, but also like, here's the pieces that contribute to this. Does that seem like a reasonable space to function from?
And that would be like wordsmithing.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between these
Right.
two versions, yeah.
Well, and it may be kind of flipping your message around, the voters in the Glendale-River Hills School District, not Nicolay, but kind of Nicolay, approved a referendum in 2020 to help us maintain programs and services for students, X, Y, and Z things. That money is expiring, which is one of our challenges. And then, making matters worse, putting further strain, whatever those words are. As you likely heard, we ran into some financial difficulties with folks that are no longer through our district. Combined, this is making the need for your consideration of an operational referendum even more important or serious. So it might just come down to flipping the two as opposed to putting more emphasis on one or the other.
Well, and you had also mentioned alternate ways of communicating certain things. I wonder, would there be a benefit to some other type of communication going out, addressing the current situation separately, and then, or just.
We talked about that, and we hadn't made any moves on, because the last communication the board gave to caregivers in the community was potentially for the community. So the mayor is going to share it out on their Facebook and their website, like that communication, or not a link to our budget information. We talked about whether sending that letter out to the community might be appropriate. I was questioning like timing of sending that letter and then 2 weeks later getting the survey, and it seemed like, that didn't quite feel right at this point. So this is a way to share information, right, in a sense. But I think we're in a place that we could find a compromise on tone that hopefully would make everyone, that would come from the wordsmithing. I like the idea of just providing some more context and differentiating from Nicolay. So I think that could be achieved. Yeah.
I just want to ask a question one more time, slightly differently. We had a little bit of news coverage, and I guess my question for you guys over at School Perceptions is, we didn't have, I guess, we did. We literally were out there first. We publicized our message from the get-go, but the wider, more, received message of immediacy, urgency, and scandal came from the news media.
Yeah.
And I guess my concern is, I'm trying to process whether or not we need to do something specifically, not to just acknowledge the reality of our circumstances, but to maybe there's nothing we can do, but to undermine or to counter or to address any negative perception that came from that news coverage that still lingers.
Do you mean within the survey or outside of it?
Within the survey or outside of it. I mean,
That's the communication. I think.
yeah, no, but I'm saying, but I mean, the rationale for doing it, though, one thing is communicated. Another thing is, we got to kind of slam the press, right? So initially by some media. I'm just saying, people see that in the news and they have the impression, they're gonna go, oh my God, do we have to worry about that? Or
Well, so it is addressed to a degree, I will say, because what we will do is put we're saying we have budget information on our site, and that's where all of our communications are. So if we think about that, we may be able to say, to see the communication sent out to families around the budget, go here. So it's on here, but we can maybe be more clear that we are communicating, because that would counter that we aren't transparent, right? That would counter the negative narrative. That here's where we communicated, here's where you get more information. Does that work for you?
Yeah, no, and, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering about that trust their community and the trust that they're gonna read it, and frankly, most community members, I think, I forget who said it, have been responsive to the fact, it was you who said it, have been responsive to the fact that, we have acknowledged accountability. And that they want more.
Often.
And
Yes.
and I think that Rob's point is that the survey is going to people who aren't those people. It's going to our entire community who have a range of engagement and a range of feelings about our district and their role, right? And so,
And the problem with putting too much context in the survey is the too many words problem.
yeah, right. Okay,
Go back to.
I wanna keep us moving because I think I hear consensus from that we could find middle ground on the tone. And so Rob, we could work with you and administrators to sort of rework that language, but then that's sort of the first piece you want us to cover tonight, right? Like messaging and tone.
Yes, so I think we can work through that. I think then.
What do you want to get from this survey or? So what's next is what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know if that was to me. Sorry. So the next thing that we would need to decide on then is after we establish the tone, which are on the way to doing now, is kind of the meat and potatoes of it, which is then what amount of money are you proposing to test with your community? And there are multiple ways to do this, neither of which are perfect. We do all of these options all the time. One way to do it is say, we've sharpened our pencils. We need X number of dollars for X number of years. It is by far the simplest. The more simple a survey, the more I can give you a thumbs up or thumbs down, the more likely people are to take it. So if you can get there, that's great. We need this amount of money for this number of years. Each year it's going to cost you this. And this is how much it's going to cost you based on how much property value you have. If you can't get there, that's fine. One of the things that we have up on our screen here is a good, better, best model, which is it's kind of up to you to determine what the good is and what the best is. But let's say, for instance, whatever this is, and again, I'm going to make up numbers here. $2 million is a break even. And for that, all you can do is maintain what you have. You're not cutting, you're not gaining anything. That might be only break even. But then maybe you go up to 2.5, and then you rehire a couple of teachers and teach some more tech ed classes in 8th grade or something, whatever that example is. And then maybe for option 3, that's the most expensive, and that's another couple of more ornaments on the tree. For $3 million, we're going to do this, and we're going to hire this teacher and increase social emotional learning for these kids, and we're going to put more money into our maintenance budget. You make up, and those are purely examples, but you would make up what those are going to be. And then I, as a survey taker, tell you what appetite I have for it. But good doesn't always need to be break even. I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but anything is probably better than nothing. So maybe if 2 million is break even, maybe you say, the first option is 1 million. That would require another $1 million in cuts, but it would allow us to, maintain these things. And then maybe your second option, maybe the middle option is the break even, and then option 3 is kind of a few goodies on the tree, and that's where you get to rehire a few teachers and do some extra things. So what the levels aren't necessarily all that important, but this style is there's this number, this number, this number. They get steadily more expensive, and I guess kind of where this lands, we did this in Spooner a couple of years ago. And O'Connell Falls and Nicolay had this exact same model. I think Spooner, for instance, though, landed somewhere between option 1 and option 2. That was kind of the threshold was kind of in the middle there. So they found a number that was between option 1 and option 2, went out to ballot, and they ultimately saw passage. So it gives you a bit more granular data, but it does, you would have to determine as a group, if we get this money, you have to be willing to say, and this is what we're going to do with it to the taxpayer. So you do kind of have to make a decision as a group to say, if it's this much, this is how we've agreed to spend it, because people do kind of have to know, what are you going to do with my money if I say yes? One more thing, and then I'm going to shut up again for a second. I heard maybe the opportunity to do kind of a different amount each year. It's an option. It is by far the most confusing. So I'm going to flash this up on a screen for a second. This is the way this looks. Now you think about school finance about 70 times more often than your average community member. And I would say, if you can't figure out this chart in a couple of seconds, then it's very difficult for anybody else to figure out it as well. But when you do a step model, it kind of looks like this. What is the amount we're asking for each year? What is that tax, or what is it going to do to the mill rate? nobody thinks in terms of mill rates, then we have to translate that. What is that relative each year? So it's 137, maybe the first year, and then an additional 66 the next year for a total of 203. But people don't always do the math right. They're going to glance, they're doing this while they're making kids dinner and thinking about who's taking the kids to basketball practice. So they'll think, okay, this is 2.75. And then, oh my God, by the end, you're getting 5 million, not 2.25. Or they'll add these and think, oh my God, my taxes are tripling over the next 3 years. So we do this. In fact, we tested this with Stoughton and it passed last night, but it takes a lot of communication to get people to understand why the numbers are different each year and how that means in terms of taxes. And first year it's going to go down and then it's going to go up. It's by far the most confusing, but it is an option. So that's kind of the next thing is, what are you going to ask your community for? Is it one number over a certain number of years? Is it kind of that good, better, best that I had? Or is it something like this where the number is going to change each year?
Are you hoping we'll decide tonight, or is this a question we take away and think about?
Yes. It's a hard question to answer in one night. I recognize that. And you would need some time to figure out, okay, if we go up to the second level, what are we going to spend that money on? That's something that's pretty difficult to figure out in one meeting or third.
Well, we know that we need Gus and Todd and the admin team to weigh in on the numbers and some of the specifics. So we just need to set a deadline, which is going to be so I guess we'll need your feedback if you think that we could potentially approve this stuff by the end of next week or okay. Okay.
We just need to I'll talk to Todd and we'll talk to Bear.
Okay.
Because they'll have an idea.
Okay.
The issue that we have, which is unique, is that you have a operational referendum that expires June 30th of 2025, that you're going to have to add back on later on. We're not going to need that in 24, 25, because we'll already have it, but you're going to need both of those there. So you're going to have two amounts, because the amounts won't change. Once you add that on, the amounts may not change as you go forward, but we'll definitely have two amounts for sure. One for 24, 25, and one for 25, 26, which reflects the old referendum.
Is good, better, best what I feel like that's familiar to me around here. Is that what Nicolay did? Yeah, because good, better, best is really straightforward.
Yep. Yeah, there would be some familiarity with that, which you have going for.
Yeah.
Yep, totally.
Gus, can I ask you a quick question just to kind of address this? So I guess my question is, because I've actually thought about what Karen suggested before about having, two different numbers. And I'm not suggesting that you would run on a referendum, it would be confusing too, but if you had, for example, one number that represented the deficit, and then a number that represented the regular operational, and then pay off one in year one plus operational, and then year two goes down to whatever, and year three, same thing, and year four, same thing, so forth. And there is a certain logic to that. And I guess my question is, with the deficit and all the things that we're talking about addressing, are we able to come up with a plan? And I'm going to ask you for you to tell me what it is, but conceivably, you could come up with a number that would represent over 4 or 5 years the value of both of those numbers, couldn't you?
I think we could, yeah. I think we could do that.
Oh, so you have a single number?
Well, yeah, I mean,
for 5
look,
years, that's
because if you so to use the example, right? Let's say with $1 million plus another $2 million a year, that would be a $7 million referendum. You'd say 3 million, 3 million, and then 2 million to 2 million, or you could say whatever it is, 2.3, 2.3, 2.3. I guess financially speaking, are we able to manage it if we just amortize that initial deficit over more time to be at just one number for referendum?
I mean, I think and I'd have to talk to other people, Todd and Karen and stuff like that, because there's ways. I understand about the confusion, and maybe we take a look and say that one of my thoughts is maybe we look and say it's going to be a shorter referendum, only for the fact that it's taking care of these needs, and then we will come back, instead of 5 years, we come back maybe in 3 or something to so that you can, you know, again, you gotta weigh all this, but then if you're looking to drop or saying, okay, the issue with the deficit is over with, now this is what we really need in the future. Or do we try to plan this out, as you said, Andy, over 5, how we do this? I mean, I think there's a couple different ways, but I think we have to. You said, I understand the confusion about
But that
having
might,
too many numbers changing each year, so we gotta be conscious of how we proceed.
And that might be the discussion when you get the data back that tells you what the community is open to. And if you have to do any revisiting of that feedback, you can say, okay, maybe it's gonna look like this. So I feel like I don't wanna get too much into the weeds on that. Like, we wanna be able to put something on paper to get a feel for what our community wants, right? And then we want to have ample time to process, like what Rob is saying, and process that. Say, okay, if they're gonna go for one of these, great. If they're not, what is reworking it look like to a place where our community would support it?
Todd has been working on that deficit with Barrett. I think I need to talk to both of them and say, okay, how would this look? I mean, my first thought would be, how is this gonna look over 5 years? That's been your history, right? 5-year referendum. So how's this gonna look over 5 years, knowing that we got it, you know, we got this previous referendum in there, and that's gotta be rolled into this one at some point in time. So let me talk, that's not, we're all too much on the numbers here. Let me talk, and my preference, what I'm hearing is try to get the 3 different number, 3, you know. Good, better, best. Yeah, good, better, best.
Yeah.
Numbers. So that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'll go back and work on right away.
Okay,
Not to muddy your waters, but I guess you're also not beholden to 3. We just did a referendum and it passed in Luxembourg Casco last night, and they just did 2. So they kind of said, you know, maybe one number is a break even, and then would you allow us to expand this referendum by X dollars a year to fund X, Y, and Z thing. So just know that it could be a good, better. You know, it doesn't have to be 3 levels. It could be 2 levels, and there's different ways to do that. Basically, you don't think that you have to be 3.
I will still ask for 3 because my feeling is, even you guys can all decide, but my feeling is that the people taking the survey feel like they have more say if they got 3 choices.
yeah. Okay,
So
all right.
noodle on that strategy.
Yep.
Then cost cutting options. So this is regardless of kind of what these are, I guess I'm less concerned about the questions right this second, but it's more, you know, obviously it's your prerogative as a survey taker and taxpayer to say no. But then the corollary to that is we need some help understanding where it is we should make cuts. You know, is it that we're going to delay curriculum updates or transportation or whatever those things are? This is where you ask those.
Let's look at lists. That's where you guys get to dig in, I think.
Yep.
And then there's questions. That me? There it goes. There's a question of whether we should add a question about Good Hope.
Well, I mean, I already said that, so I don't know, I have to say it again, but when you're asked about what we wanted, that's what popped in my head as I was looking at this. That it seems, and actually, it parlays into one other issue, which is, I think that what we have these surveys, when we do ask money, oftentimes we ask money and say, please let us keep services at the same level. And we don't really dive into and this is different, what we're dealing with. But historically, in our school, our discussion is limited to let's keep services at the same level. And I find that satisfying as a discussion, say let's keep that same level when the question always is, what more can you do? And I think that the community is going to be asking that question of what more can you do? And somehow we need to be able to ask that question, like, will you support it without additional cuts? Will you support it with cuts? Will you support it with the sale of, you know, school property? Not Parkway or, you know, the Glendale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But I mean, I feel like if we're gonna go ahead and sell out Good Hope, I mean, we should also give a community feel for that. So this might be, but there's 2 things here. It's not just about Good Hope, because that's a conversation we have to have. It's about getting a feel from the community if they feel like we've done enough with getting a loan, with making cuts, with doing maybe, you know, additional cuts. And also communicating that, like you're saying, usually the 20 minutes of way of communicating without advocating. But saying, you know, would you support it right now, or do you think you need to do more before you would support it? So. That's
So we
you.
don't charge by the word, which is good. So I think if you're paying for a survey, let's get all the questions you want in here. And I think that would definitely be fodder for the next section. So hold that thought for 30 seconds, and then I'm going to revisit your question and talk about how we might be able to do that. The next section is the facility planning. So I'm not sure what draft you have in front of you, but the one that I have up here is from Mike. It's kind of the really general facility issues. So kind of doing some educating here and what's wrong with what we currently have and why can't we pay for this out of our annual budget? So be it boilers, be it water heaters, roof sections, cracking brickwork and some tuck pointing that needs work, ADA accessibility, whatever those examples are, speaking or using those in survey speak, you know, not construction speak or architecture speak, but in ways that anybody could understand. What's wrong with what we currently have? And then asking that these types of things are funded out of a capital or facilities referendum. And while our focus is on stabilizing the budget, you know, what advice do you have for us after we get this house in order? Should we support, or would you support exploring a facilities referendum over whatever, 1 year, 5 years, whatever that time frame is, or next? But I want to make sure that people are kind of put on notice that this is happening, and they can give you feedback on whether there's appetite at all to even talk about it right now. And if there's yes, which there usually is, not always, but if there's yes, then it allows you permission to move forward and say, okay, the community knows this is coming. Now we're going to articulate the solutions to these problems, and then we'll come back and say, here's how much they're going to cost total, and here's how much they're going to cost you as a taxpayer. If you hear no, though, that's great data to know now. If people don't even have an appetite to hear about it right now, then you would have to put this back on the bookshelf for a little bit and come back after a couple of years. But that's the benefit of asking. It's kind of, do we have permission to keep planning? With relation to Good Hope, though, I would say you put that into this section. But I guess it all kind of comes down to, would we have the information in time to make sure people have an informed decision? And I have no idea if that's true or not. That's an honest to God question. So I think we'd have to have some background on, here's where we're at now, here's what the building's used for, and here's how much it costs, you know, whether it's we're making money, we're losing money, whatever, but here's who uses it, and here's, you know, over the next 10 years, it's going to need X million dollars worth of work. Should we continue to operate it, yes or no? You know, and if it's yes, you know, it's going to involve an investment, and that's coming later on. You know, do you want to talk about that? I think people kind of want to know, if I say yes, what are the consequences? And if no, are you selling it, and are you going to tear it down? But I think you kind of have to be a little bit ready of, if you say yes, keep it, then I have to know that there may be something coming up later on. If I say, no, I don't really want you to, I may have questions on, are you going to sell it? Are you going to tear it? What are you going to do with it? And I think you'll have to be ready to address some of those questions if you ask that type of question.
Yeah, I worry we wouldn't have that information, like we won't have that information by next week to finalize that question. And so it becomes like, is it good data that if you're asking people who might not be engaged, should we sell a building we own? And that's like their context. Or do you add more words to give enough context and then make the survey longer? To me, that doesn't seem, I think there may be opportunity down the line to think about community engagement on that, but if we're not there yet, I don't feel like it would be a good time to ask them in this context after hearing that. Anybody else have thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, would it make sense to send out a survey about, you know, possible referendum, and then send out a facilities one that would include, are you interested in us exploring facilities updates, and then include Good Hope on that one?
Well, I'm saying if you get good data back and it says, yeah, explore the facilities referendum, then as part of that, that's where you engage.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, you could stop after the referendum, and then you could include that one with the facilities update with Good Hope.
Yes, I correct.
Yep. You can also say you're studying it and not ask a question. I mean, you can also say, you know, we're studying options for Good Hope. You know, stay tuned. You know, you don't say that, but you know, stay tuned because we're going to come back to you and we need your help.
This is the part where Karn had feedback, I think, right? And so this in the ordering of the facility planning, right?
Well, I guess if this is really just a matter of, I think what you've done is you've ordered it kind of in a certain it almost feels hierarchical, except the accessibility piece is actually something that I think is a really essential piece in our district classrooms.
You may be
and so
giving
I
us more.
wonder-
Sorry,
Yeah, if there's
go
a
ahead.
order.
You may be giving us a little more credit than you should. At this point, I'm not sure we even thought about order. I think we just wanted to make sure they were all correct. But to that end, I think we often group safety, security, and accessibility together. Those are pretty related. So we could even put it, third in your list, making sure that people get safely into the building, regardless of our abilities. So kind of the buildings are locked, they're safe. I would maybe put it right up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can bump up classrooms. Yeah, we didn't give a lot of thought to order here, but you're right. There is a method to the madness. We just didn't have any madness yet.
I would just tell you that the district I was working in that did this had a concern about the priority. They just decided to do it in alphabetical order on the headings, and that way they said there was,
Yeah, it was more.
Yeah.
Well, that would actually work. People could do it and it puts accessibility at the top.
You could do accessibility, building systems, classrooms.
but then it wasn't, no one could, the response was, we just did it in alphabetical order. We didn't put it in priority. We just-
Oh, so no one could claim that you were gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could we do that, Rob? Alphabetical order? So you were making decisions, okay?
Yeah, I love it. This is good. This is good stuff.
Actually, I did have a question.
Sorry.
So if we go back, and I apologize, but to cost cutting options, I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to ask it because I gotta scratch the itch. So we say yes, no, not sure. But we're not developing does that alone develop a hierarchy? Because I think the other piece to that is like, how do we prioritize cuts? Like if people say yes to 8 things, and that's the dominant answer for those 8 things, we still don't know within those 8 things what people would value or not. Or do we just say, you know what, at that point, the district administration makes that decision?
You're 100% on the latter. Yeah. So just mathematically, we're going to weight these behind the scenes. So a yes is a 10, a no is a 1. So when you put all the data together, anything above a 5.5, the median of that scale is where the community is saying, yes, I want you to cut this area. But then you're 100% right. Then the board and administration would have to come back and say, okay, if we're going to reduce transportation, then what within state law can we do, to make sure that students aren't crossing hazardous roadways and things like that. But then it goes over to you to just say, okay, if the community told us to do this, what can we reasonably cut? Which also means that the things that are here have to be reasonable cuts. If you're offering only the bare minimum in transportation that you are, that you can by state law, then it's not a good thing to ask because you can't reduce it. So there is a little bit of art here, but otherwise you're absolutely on the knuckle. It would come back to then you as district leaders to say, what more specifically are we going to cut in this?
Thank you.
The final bits of your survey, I'm open to. They can be there. They don't have to be there, but it's more general. I guess the lack of a better way to say it is people are enthusiastic about giving you feedback beyond when you may need financial help. And when we don't, people are kind of say, well, you only ever ask me when you need money. I want to tell you other things. So I'm not saying you don't do these, but these are things that we can ask that we've tried in other districts that give you a good indication of beyond financial situations. Are we matching your expectations as a community? Are we offering you opportunities to give feedback to us? Are our campuses safe and secure? Are we preparing students for high school? Do we have high expectations for students and so on? This is more than optional. If it'll help you in your long-term planning, great, let's keep it. If you hate every question, we'll take them out and I will never lose any bit of sleep over it. I'll lose sleep about a lot of things, but that won't be it. And it makes a shorter survey. And then we also have a section here that can give advice to a superintendent. We thought maybe it'd be helpful as you're putting out a survey, but by no means do you need to keep these questions. They're merely ideas to think about and doodle on. So from a broad perspective, I guess less about the questions that are in here, but is this data that you want right now, or do you want to strictly focus to operational and facility planning and do something like this later on?
Yeah. Well, I helped you make this, so I like it. I like asking those questions. We don't have a lot of opportunities for broader community engagement, and we haven't created those opportunities yet. So this feels like a good time and space to do it, especially with you guys analyzing that data for us and helping us to understand what it means. So.
I have a question as to whether or not there's any value at looking at those areas and aligning them a little bit more closely with our strategic plan.
Which
The areas where you're seeking feedback around communication climate, if we could, because those do connect very tightly to our strategic plan.
Really good question. The answer is yes, and I should have mentioned this up front. So all of these in here, because we've asked them enough times across, well, I guess across the country, but especially across the state, we can give you comparison data here. So on a 1 to 5 scale, if you land at a 3.43, we'll be able to tell you, is that good? Is that normal? Is that about where we should be? If you change any of them, then we won't be able to give you that comparison context. Because by definition they would be customized, but it doesn't mean you can't. You know, we can absolutely tailor this to any way that you need. I would say then the benefit will probably come in the future as and when you repeat the survey. Then you'll be able to see are we making growth or declines. So it's kind of a free, you know, it's a blank slate for you. But that's why we start you with these, is because we can provide you comparison data should you want.
So follow up. So if we were to customize and then down the line, like continue in a cyclical sort of surveying of community, we would just be able to keep incorporating these, like especially if we kept utilizing your services, and then you could analyze that data against just our data. Right?
Yeah, I hope you do, because I think you guys are fun. But yes, that's exactly what would happen. We would, you know, we would say 3 years down the road, you know, here's where you were before, here's where you are now. You went up, you went down. But yeah, you are the owner of the survey. We will type in here whatever you want. You know, the first year of the data is kind of it's not useless. It's just the hardest to translate because we don't know. It's a snapshot in time. We don't know how you stack up. We don't know where you're going. But by the second and third time round, it's very valuable. So totally up to you what you want.
Okay.
But usually it's a mix, by the way. Usually people kind of like, well, these I kind of want to know how we stack up. Here, let's change them. But up to you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I think that would be the next conversation. Sorry, I just talked loudly. Okay. So I think that we understand the to-do piece of this, right? For the board, and well, mainly administrators at this point is filling in these details. But then we would need, and some of the wordsmithing, and then we'd have to do that in conjunction, I mean, working with you guys through some drafts. So that's, yeah, what would the deadline be? What could we, when would the board need to have an approved survey to stick with our timeline? Because you said the week of April 8th. So could we like get a week? Like a Thursday, or what do you?
So let's say this lands May 1st. Let me just throw out a number. So back up 3 weeks. I'd really love to send this to printer by end of day Thursday, if possible. Well, okay, in a dream world, I would love to have this done by Wednesday night or Wednesday end of business day, so that I could send it to the proofer on Thursday and send it to print before they close for the weekend on Friday.
That would require, I mean, we kind of have to pivot and focus on this piece. Yeah, but I want to get it. Okay. Okay, so that means we would need to schedule a board meeting. What's it at? Wednesday? So we want to maybe Wednesday, Tuesday night or Wednesday morning? Wednesday after. Well, we'll have to figure that out. We can talk about that in our future meeting, to schedule it, but if we met Wednesday with a do or die vote, you can think of a virtual meeting. Sure. A virtual meeting. Yeah, and I guess that just means that what we'll do is we'll have to have a lot of collaboration and communication about the edits and changes as we go. Like,
you know, if you need another week, I guess I wouldn't sweat it too much. You know, if you close it with.
I think we can do this. I think we should just.
All right, I love the enthusiasm. I love it. I love deadlines.
That enthusiastic.
We want to lance the boil.
Yeah, yeah. I think. Okay.
Yeah. I've never heard a survey described that way, but it's kind of boil-like after a while. I get it.
Okay.
Just looking ahead to next week, for so we're going to be in person in Janesville, and then we're in Marion on Wednesday night. So they beat you to the punch. We can try to make ourselves available, but I know Tuesday's not going to work, and big question mark on Wednesday. It doesn't mean you absolutely need us for that, but there were some districts that beat you to the punch for those 2 nights.
I think if we're just in contact, maybe Tuesday, or, I mean, I think we'll kind of try to keep you back and forth with whenever we get done and get your,
Sure.
yeah, get your advice through that
Yep.
process. Okay.
Sure.
Okay,
I think I'm out of smart things to say. I think I ran out.
okay. Okay. All right,
Danielle, we can share some emails. We can get a hold of each other tomorrow, and we can schedule something and kind of review feedback and go with Scott and we'll get work.
all right, that sounds good. Okay.
Anything else you need from us though before we log off for the night?
Anything else? No. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you all.
Bye. Okay. There's one more piece to this, and then I would absolutely entertain a motion to take a break. But we have printing companies, 2 quotes to choose from, and I would, let me just pull it up really quick. I want to clarify, so both of these quotes are valid. They will, yeah, they're good. And so I personally would think I would move with lacrosse. Because there's less unknown, right? They kind of got that estimate of the postage, and I just sort of appreciate the accessibility of their quote. And essentially both were highly recommended by school perceptions. They use both all the time. They would not preference one over the other when pushed, so.
Why not go with the cheaper one?
Well, it's not cheaper, it's just that the piece is not, they didn't give an estimate of the mailing, but they're very, it will likely be very similar. Well, if you do, okay, so if you look at the
Postage not included in above price.
and in this one, lacrosse,
Lift and rate.
lacrosse makes an estimate of postage, which is included. And their estimate was like 2,500. And graphic just doesn't make that estimate. So unless other people have strong feelings, maybe a motion and we can discuss, or maybe we don't, I don't know.
Sure, I'll make a motion to adopt the lacrosse mailing solutions. Proposal.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to move forward with the lacrosse mailing solutions for the printing of the survey. Okay, any discussion on this?
Yeah, I mean, so it still seems like, even with the estimate, I mean, it's still, we need to say it'd probably be roughly the same and still be about, more expensive. I don't know if we can talk the real numbers here, but that's what it kind of looks like to me.
Anybody else want to discussion?
I mean, is that wrong? I don't know. I would just wanted to have a discussion about it. I didn't mean to attack anyone here.
Oh, no, you're fine, don't worry about it.
Well, the response seems, it's,
No, just, you said you wanted to explain, I was showing you what was missing.
okay,
I didn't know if you received it.
I did.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I think the price will be I think the prices will be comparable. And it's a nominal difference, so I appreciate that.
2,000, right?
No,
If graphic has 3,500 plus 480, so that's 4,000 plus the mailing, which was estimated at 2,500. If I work that out, the lacrosse quote is lower.
right. So you take the total minus their mailing and then you compare that to graphic, right?
And I just ask one question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Still
besides
question,
price,
go ahead.
Sure, besides the price factor, which really should be. And the other quality factor.
No. No, they both come highly recommended. It's really like, it's just one, so that we have our rating for about the survey ready.
So when I'm looking at these two samples, we have the lacrosse, which is quoting at 7,320.
Oh, it's 7,300? I saw
Where?
6,400.
So that at the cost, the quantity of the 8-page booklet is 7,320. I see that the graphic composition quoted for 100 fewer. So it's 7,220. But it's more expensive.
But lacrosse also says 7,220 for postage and for mailing service.
Okay, so that
The
might be,
booklet may be, well, I don't know if it's a typo or if the booklet.
because they give us extras, right?
We have to have some available for people to like copy for, yeah, right.
Well, also, if that's their quote, that's what they do. So we get 100, I mean, that's my point.
Yeah.
Like, if that's what they quoted, we get that number.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it seems like ultimately, because Ben, I was doing the math too, like, I don't love that these quotes aren't inherently comparable. It drives me a little bit nuts. But it does seem as though at the end, the lacrosse becomes slightly less if we estimate the postage similarly.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? So there's a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I don't see anything from the audience, anything online too. We do a voice vote, so all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, moving forward with lacrosse. How about English?
I move for a 7-minute break.
Up here. Specifically. Second. All in favor, voice vote, aye.
Aye.
All right, 7 minutes, we'll come back at 8:34. So we have item 6A, teaching and learning as a professional development update. In the interest of time, because there's still quite a lot that needs to be addressed in closed session too. I can't make the motion, but if I didn't, I mean,
We'll have the staff deal with that.
I did discuss them, okay, and so staff, so this was this is now discussion, so.
Okay, I will make a motion to postpone agenda item 6A to the next COW meeting on May 1st.
Well, so, yeah,
We do that.
yes, we can, yes, we can. So we'll have discussion in just a second. There's a second. Okay, so there's a motion and a second to move this item to the May COW, and yes, because the calendar is still being in preparation, we talked about the idea of having new board members be able to weigh in on the process in its entirety, which would be presenting it at a May COW, and then giving time to get feedback and asking for a vote at the May board meeting, and I was told that that would be acceptable in terms of timeline.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to add?
Nope. Okay. All right, so is there any more discussion? All right, all in favor, voice vote aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will revisit that at our main COW meeting. I would also entertain a motion on policy. If anybody would like to make a motion to.
Sure, I'll make a motion to postpone agenda items 7A through D to the, are you thinking May 1 COW or April 17?
I think that it would be worth
April 17th.
discussing at our next board meeting.
All right, so motion to postpone all the items under agenda number 7 to the April 17th board meeting.
Any discussion? Okay, I think in the interest of time, we want to give this more. We have time. Okay, and all in favor, voice vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll revisit this at our regular board meeting. Moving on to board member reports, although it has not been certified, I do want to welcome Katie Avalos, Chris Robinson. Right. The new board member, as well as Karen Cromwell, will continue on in her role. And so we are very excited to have you all. And look forward to working with you and onboarding you, which is the next item 8B. Want to just speak to that quickly?
Sure. I put together a very quick rough draft of sort of onboarding topics that we might cover at a onboarding retreat, which I hope we can have in the next couple of weeks. And Karin and I were also saying that with me 2 years into the board and Karin 1 year into the board, we would still benefit very much from a retreat that covers at least the topics that are contained here. So hopefully we can get feedback, and I'll work with Karin to kind of put together a more firm plan. Would love feedback from both of you as well, what you think is really important for you to get some initial onboarding around. And we'll get that going.
Okay. And I lost. Okay, moving on. Meeting closing, so 9A, so review of to-do items. So I do want to kind of utilize this since I do believe some to-do items came up in this meeting for one. I'm gonna pull this up. So we have the Good Hope info that we have said will be Todd, Gus, Allison, Mike Carlson, in conjunction with Mike Hacker and myself. To work on getting that together for a May board meeting. So that's gonna go on a list for. Oh, thank you. I just read June count. Thank you, sorry. We also have a to do for the administrative team in terms of tweaking the language. And we'll be doing that in conjunction with school perceptions and myself. I think just around like the language and sharing that out with the board as we go. And then we will be looking to schedule a meeting on Wednesday to approve that and get that over to school perception. So that'll be our next under item 9B. There are a couple things that we have sort of let fall off that I want to put back on our list, which would be the employee handbook. So that's sitting there with suggestions and revisions from legal. So we need to get that back on our agenda. And I'm not sure if I know when that would be most appropriate to hand. Like that might be a June calendar.
And I wanted to talk to Gus about some of the other pieces of the handbook we talked about, like retirement, stuff like some of the
right
pieces. So I don't know if I got time to review.
Yeah, we could.
Or June or July, even July. I don't know. He's only fine. That's right, June cow. We'll get that. We can revisit that. Yeah, right. Okay. So I just want to put that on the radar. And then we had discussed a while back talking about surveys and the cycle of surveys and stakeholder feedback. So I want to make sure that we do revisit that in conjunction with the survey we're doing now.
I had that out in this meeting.
What did you have that for? The board meeting? I think that's okay. Yeah, I would move it to, I would probably move it, but to. Yeah, I think so. So I think ideally we would keep this running list and maybe like in our administrative content, we would be able to revisit it, like just know that. So,
And then we have to schedule an onboarding meeting.
yes, so moving on to future agenda topics. Unless, did I miss anything? Did I miss anything that we spoke about? Getting. I don't think so. Okay. Future, yeah, so we need to schedule a meeting for onboarding. We would like to do that. So we have the board meeting on the 17th. Right?
And then the swearing in of, we officially take stuff fourth Monday is the April 22nd.
Oh, 22nd. So with the 24th work? Or onboarding meeting? I'm looking for, I mean, it would be nice to have maybe some, well,
I have a Nicolay.
okay. How will we, Andy and Ben would not be about the 18th? Well, how should we schedule this? How about you? Offline, we can schedule it offline. I'll do a doodle, we'll figure it out. That's an action item. move it to the to-do. Danielle just said doodle schedule onboarding. And also we're meeting with Taylor next week to kind of firm up what onboarding might look like and so who might be involved. So it'll make more sense to see at that point. But just know it's coming.
It could be maybe in phases as well, like perhaps that would be a possibility, like phase one could be overview, phase two overview.
Or like a separate budget onboarding with us.
Well, so at our May 15th meeting, we will have Steve from Neola available. We've talked about bringing the head of WASDA in for our board retreat to talk about the governance and meeting efficiency and roles and all of that kind of thing. So like it should be phased in, but like I think there should be an introductory.
Ideally, like perhaps the staff doesn't need to be at the first one.
That's a great thing. Like that, yeah. Because ideally it is an ongoing, we're continuously improving, right? And working on that. So okay, great. Board meeting debrief. Anyone? I would like to make a culpa for the lateness of information that was given to folks. It falling after spring break. There's lots of reasons. Hashtag like, but I think the goal moving forward is to have a packet out much sooner. I'd like to see it sooner than we've been doing in the past. And see if we can try to make that a ambitious goal. So I think that we all did pretty well considering that I've bombarded you with a lot of information in the recent days leading up to this. And same for our admin team. I know all been on break and then they're showing up to present and do this. So that's I could do better. Debrief. Okay. Anyone else?
I would just like to say thank you, right? Because it's a lot to coordinate and there was a lot of people who are here doing a lot of work. And so thank you. I'm sorry that we didn't quite get to you guys, but also you get to go. But also I really appreciate, I feel like we're really working hard to continue to align and understand. And sometimes there's stress fractures in that conversation and that's okay. But we're also, I think, still continuing to come back together and have good conversations. And so I appreciate that. The tone, not every school board manages to maintain a reasonable tone, right?
Okay. No one else wants to jump in. We can move on to our closed session. This is a mouthful, but I need somebody to read this motion in its entirety, please. Carla has made a lot of motions. So. I mean, Andy and Ben, you only have so many opportunities to do this.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. You can hear me go on.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to section 19.85C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Specifically to discuss employment of an interim superintendent and part-time business manager and certain preliminary teacher contracts. Section 19.85F, to discuss personnel concerns related to a specific individual, which if discussed in public would likely have a substantial adverse impact on the reputation of the individual. And section 19.851B, to discuss licensing of a former employee and intended course of action.
There's a motion and a second to convene into closed session pursuant to 1985C. F and 1B. I'll do a roll call vote. Karen Conwell.
Yes.
Andrew Franklin.
Yes.
Ben Wynn.
Yes.
Carla Pennington Cross. Aye. Danielle Bailey votes yes. So we will now move into closed session. Yep. I'll move to that. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. There would reasonably be there. I would anticipate no action coming out of this upon reconvening in session.